We stepped up when it comes to mass testing. But the greatest question is, how do we achieve this? All that and much more will be coming your way in the course of Good Morning Kenya today. Welcome to the program.
A warm welcome once again. My name is Jane Boy. As always, we are glad you are with us this morning. Now, today on my end of things, we're going to be putting focus on some of the ripple effects that have come as a result of COVID-19. And more so, we're going to be focusing on our healthcare providers, just trying to look at their mental state, their well-being. How are they coping during this time? And even you as a Kenyan, how are you coping during this time when it comes to dealing with issues to do with anxiety? Some cases have been reported of medics saying that they're suffering from insomnia due to some of these pressures that they are receiving from their workplace and the environment, and especially now during this time that we are dealing with this pandemic. So we're going to be having that discussion in not too long, and we welcome you to be part of this discussion. As always, our social media platforms are up and running. Feel free to talk to us. Do let us know where you're watching us from. The official hashtag ever remains Good Morning Kenya. Our official station handle is at KBC Channel 1 TV, and do remember to tag us individually. We'll be letting you know how you can get to us, but my handle is at Jane Boy. My colleagues will be giving you their handles in not too long, but feel free to talk to us. Let us know how you're enjoying the show and where you are watching us from this morning.
The headlines begins right about now with a quick overview of what has been captured on the various front page of this today's newspaper issues. We're starting off with the Standard, where the return of Raila's take a center stage. Matters politics. A jovial-looking Orange Party leader is back in the thick of Kenya's politics and 1.5 months since taking off to attend to his personal health. Captured there on page 5 of the Standard. Now, below there, still matters of politics taking center stage. Murkomen Sakaja on the crosshairs. Party discipline. Jubilee Vice Chairman Murathe warns of disciplinary action against senators who conspired under One Kenya Movement banner to shoot down county revenue bill. Now, this comes a time when Senate is set to debate that particular issue today. Quoted there, David Murathe says, "We are not yet done. We will deal with the senators for going against the party position. They will have themselves to blame for their parochial decisions. We will kick them out of the party." Will they? Will Jubilee take action against Sakaja and Murkomen? Remember, these are not nominated leaders. They are elected. So what does the law say in regard to that particular issue? Putting also into perspective the issue of party guidelines and policies put into perspective. There will be keepingly watching that. Remember, this is a time when succession politics of 2022 is quite rife. Still focusing on the front page, we have so much on the COVID-19 situation, where we have a story there. A nurse who gave birth on oxygen support dies. What looked like a COVID-19 success story turned tragic when Marianne lost the fight for her life even after testing negative. More details are going to be coming up in the course of this particular broadcast.
Moving on now to the front page of the Star. This Tuesday, 25 senators plot to reject Uhuru Raila proposals. That is the front page on this particular daily, as even Treasury CS Ukur Yatani brokers deal to send counties around 187 billion. Now, yesterday there was that meeting between CS Ukur Yatani, the Attorney General, the Council of Governors, together with the leadership of the Senate, to just look into how to unlock this stalemate. Also, the Commission for Revenue Allocation had its voice on this particular matter and actually says there is no lacuna in law, because should there be a stalemate when it comes to the formula to be used to disburse funds to the counties, then counties can benefit by getting half of the monies that were allocated and disbursed to them during the previous financial year. But clearly that is not the issue in this particular matter, is it? Today, all eyes will be on 7 senators who will be the determining factor on whether or not Kenya will get a formula to disburse money to the counties. And the interesting thing is, as much as these senators have their regions benefit from the current proposed formula on the floor of the Senate, some say they choose to stand in solidarity with Kenya. Take a note of Johnson Sakaja, who is the Nairobi County Senator, as much as his county will benefit by getting an additional 1.2 billion Kenya shillings. He says overall, the formula proposed as of now is not good for Kenya. So moving forward, what will it take for Kenya to get a formula that will see counties funded for the financial year 2020-2021? Now that is the top story in the Star this Tuesday.
All right, now let's get to the front page of the Daily Nation. And this is a story that we were actually listening to as we were on our way this morning with Regina, about a family that has hit the international media for having stole billions from the U.S. Now, this family hails from Makueni. It's the main story here on the front page of the Daily Nation. They are said to have made history by stealing the largest amount of money without being involved in tendering or firing a single shot, making Kenya a global hotspot for technologically based crime. The FBI has started this global manhunt for these scammers years ago, but it was not until recently when they actually managed to get a hold of these guys. And this was also in assistance with the Kenya Police Service, who got information last year in November that the Interpol actually reached out and told them they were looking for some Kenyans who were involved in tax fraud of about 2 billion Kenya shillings that they stole in the course of a number of years that they had been at it. We'll be getting a deeper look at that story. But still on the front page of the Daily Nation, matters to do with COVID-19. It talks of how cartels block locally made COVID kits in tender wars. And here the fight for COVID-19 billions continues to go on. And now they have mentioned Afya House, Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, and the Kenya Bureau of Standards, who are now in a battle with tenderpreneurs to see who will be on the winning side when it comes to local manufacturers. And of course, the taxpayer is said to be at the losing end. We'll be getting to details of the stories in not too long.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the headlines, details begin right about now, and we focus on that issue of the revenue sharing formula. There, Murkomen and Sakaja may be kicked out of Jubilee once more. Now, on the eve of the crucial Senate vote on the county revenue formula, Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe put out a notice on the party's 3 senators who last week defied the party position and sank its proposal. Now, in a strong arm tactic, Murathe said the party machinery will be deployed against the leader of the rebellion, that is Nairobi Senator John Sakaja, and his supporters, former Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen and Anwar Loitip from Lamu. Quoted there, a defiant Sakaja seemingly questioned this particular, move, saying, "Let them then tell us where the party senators met, caucuses, discussed this, and came up with a party position. The party position is a united Kenya. They are the ones going against the party position, and we will discipline them." That is Murathe who says that. But now we will keenly be focusing on that particular issue, where a group of 10 MPs from the Northern Frontier districts, former frontier districts, led by Mandera North MP Bashir Abdullahi Sheikh, have threatened to pull out their support for Uhuru and Raila if they continue supporting the new formula. In its current form, the new formula favors counties that are densely populated at the expense of those that have large masses but are not as populated as the latter. That is what we're going to be focusing on later with our various reporters posted at the Senate to give you, live reports from that particular debate that is going to be taking center stage this morning.
The Commission on Revenue Allocation says it remains available to provide technical input in the ongoing impasse over the third revenue sharing basis. The Commission on Monday stating that the raging debate over the formula may provide little comfort to losing counties should the equitable share allocation remain pegged at 316.5 billion shillings.
The Commission, aware of the likely impact of the new revenue sharing in terms of allocation to counties, made a provision for cushioning all the counties that were likely to see a decline of more than 5% in their equitable share. This cushioning provision would be achieved through an increase in the equitable share allocation to counties.
CRA Chairperson Jen Kiringai noted that the 2019 census has further provided fodder for variance in opinion over the now controversial formula.
As we observed at the beginning, this formula was submitted to the Senate in April 2019. The entire one man, one shilling vote was not in the media. It was not anywhere that informed this debate.
Senators are currently at an impasse over the revenue sharing formula, with a section of lawmakers vowing to shoot it down for attempting to expose some counties to financial constraints. Some of the biggest losers in the controversial formula include Wajir, Mandera, Isiolo, Marsabit and Garissa counties. Senate will be sitting on Tuesday afternoon, and top on its agenda will be for the fifth time trying to find a workable formula to unlock the stalemate. For Channel 1 News, I am Edward Kabasa.
That is what the Commission on Revenue Allocation had to say about the proposed formula. But now we have those who are not so comfortable with this particular formula, and these are leaders from the pastoralist communities have vowed to resist any attempts to slash revenue allocation to mainly the less populated regions. A report by reporter Aidan says that the leaders claimed that the move will reduce their funds allocated to such areas, and it would amount to further marginalization and erode gains made by devolution. Here's a detailed report by Aidan.
Pastoralist Parliament Group is demanding that the government increases revenue allocation from the 316.5 billion shillings and amend the original proposal that has stated standoff in the Senate. They claim will disenfranchise the less developed countries.
316 is too little. It doesn't do anything. But imagine other counties which have not had any semblance of infrastructure for 50 years. This is just too little.
The leaders are instead rooting for an increase in shareable revenue to help marginalized regions be par with other regions that have realized growth in healthcare, water and other basic needs.
I come from Wajir North constituency, and more than 58% of the population of Wajir North rely on water paths. They trek for distance of 5 to 10 kilometers to access water.
The landmass that these counties are occupying, the pastoral communities are occupying the northern region, is just left alone. And what you are considering here is the population. The country will not exist if you are not considering this landmass.
They claim the new formula being floated is a continuation of marginalization perpetuated by successive governments, mainly through such inequitable sharing of resources before the country adopted the 2010 constitution.
The many regions in this country have been excluded from decision making and deliberately denied access to key services by successive regimes, mainly through such inequitable sharing of resources formula until the advent of the 2010 constitution.
They urge senators to look beyond political inclinations and personal gains and consider the impact on more than 19 counties that will lose funds meant for critical development needs.
Therefore, hii mambo ya kutuambia sisi hatuna manambas na ni kweli wao ndio hawataki namba zetu ionekane, tunataka ikome na ikome kutoka leo. Kama wanataka kujua namba yetu, waende wafanye hesabu.
The same position is being supported by a group of youth claiming to be supporters of Deputy President William Ruto, who urge the senators to think of a bigger picture and stop any attempt that will further hurt a section of Kenyans.
Let there be equality, let there be equity, and let it ensure that there is more unity in Kenya. Let it not bring about division.
Revenue should be allocated only to the numbers and not to the region or something. If the numbers are high, let them have more revenue allocated to them.
A position supported by former Machakos Senator Johnson Muthama, who says any formula adopted should ensure each Kenyan is accommodated.
We want to remain a united country that speaks with one voice and that is concerned about other people.
The only equitable and fair formula of sharing our resources is 1 kilometer, 1 shilling. because government does not invest on individual, it invests on land. Therefore, the argument that there are regions that will have 10,000 per an individual and others 4,000 per an individual does not hold any water.
So what we are asking, tupewe pesa ya umma, and especially ile inatumwa kwa counties kulingana na idadi ya watu.
But a group calling itself the Nairobi Business Community is of the view that the revenue allocation should be guided by the population matrix and that Senate should not try to arm twist the Commission on Revenue Allocation.
What we are saying is not about, it is not about us. It is not about Central Kenya. It is about equitable sharing of revenue in this country.
We didn't have an issue when it comes to division of revenue in this country. So could there be more than meets the eye? That is one of the issues we shall be looking into a little later during the show. But right now, let's shift focus to matters COVID-19, I beg your pardon, and just draw your attention to the angle that the Star has chosen to cover this story. It's all about a statement that was released by the World Health Organization in relation to COVID-19, which practically says there is no silver bullet for COVID-19. And the Director General said that face masks should become a symbol of solidarity around the world. Now, in the wake of any pandemic, not only now, also in history, it has a way of changing the norm, and there's a new normal now that is slowly emerging, and the World Health Organization says it is better you adapt to it as early as now to help you improve the quality of your life and to make sure that you're not dealing with adverse effects that come with COVID-19. So that is the story that has been covered by the Star, the angle that the Star has given prominence to when it comes to coverage of COVID-19.
Now, speaking of COVID-19, looking at the Daily Nation, this is in regards to the story that was here on the front page in regards to cartels blocking locally made COVID kits in tender wars. Now, when we go deeper into this story, it talks of how mafia house cartels plotted to rob taxpayers. And this story has been fleshed out in quite deeper details. But in brief, it talks about how the fight for COVID-19 billions has shifted to higher grounds and is now between Afya House, KEMSA, and the Kenya Bureau of Standards. And here, of course, on the sidelines are billionaire suppliers, and on the losing ends are said to be local manufacturers and the taxpayers. And when it comes to the government labs, it is said that the CES had secretly removed the labels from PPEs that were imported from China and sent them to official government labs for testing, at KEBS for testing. And it said that the results actually shocked him after the masks miserably failed the liquid penetration test, and he also sent a sample from the same batch of the same PPEs, but to a different lab, but apparently they did pass the test with flying colors. And this now brought out the whole cartel situation, because they were samples from the same batch that were imported from China. And he went on to say that he would then write to KEMSA to stop a further importation of any of these masks, and now would resort to looking at local manufacturers for these PPEs. More of that story has been written there on both page 8 and page 9 of the Daily Nation, just to try and understand how some of these cartels are looking to benefit from the manufacturing of personal protective equipment.
Now, still keeping up with the domino effect of COVID-19 and how it is hitting hard, especially within the health system, is that there's quite a catchy story there, and quite a sorry one. When hope was dashed when a nurse lost a battle with COVID-19 days after giving birth. Now, Marianne delivered a bouncing baby boy 6 days after being taken into isolation after she tested positive. Then she tested negative 5 days later. However, what looked like a COVID-19 success story turned tragic on Sunday evening as Marianne, who was aged 32, breathed her last. For 2 days, she had complained of a sharp pain on the right side of her chest, and all frantic efforts by medics ended at 4:01 p.m. on Sunday, a day before the patient could be discharged from hospital or relocated to the general ward after she tested negative for coronavirus. Quick statistics on COVID-19 and medics is that so far, 8 healthcare workers have died of COVID-19, while there have been 634 confirmed cases among health workers. Nurses have protested the recalling of colleagues over health risk. Remember, yesterday we had their union there, Secretary General there, Seth Panyako, saying that this is like having these people just coming back on board, is giving them, it's signing a death warrant because of their age and their susceptibility to the virus. At the same time, the Ministry of Health, as well as the Cabinet Secretary of Health, Kagwe, said some medics are careless and refuse to quarantine even after being exposed. We had a story that had ran there and has been mentioned by CS Kagwe there of a surgeon who failed to quarantine himself even after they tested positive for COVID-19. They continued performing their daily duties at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Now, according to WHO, over 10,000 health workers have also tested positive in the African continent. Still keeping up with matters COVID-19, and the question is it safe for positive mothers to breastfeed babies? Being the breastfeeding week, whose theme is support breastfeeding for a healthier planet, this comes at a time when there's so much has been done in as far as, pushing for the drive to promote breastfeeding. But now with the pandemic, is it safe? According to a UNICEF report, however, it indicates that continuing to breastfeed is the best way to fight the virus and protect the baby. This is because mothers who get the virus before giving birth and begin breastfeeding, and those who become infected while breastfeeding, will produce immune factors. These are antibodies in their milk to protect their babies and enhance the baby's own immune system response. The question of whether to breastfeed or not during this COVID-19 pandemic has been answered there by that particular report. This comes at a time when WHO has said that we need to get into the program and understand that this might not just be going away soon. Actually, in their own words, is that the health organization has warned that despite the strong hopes of a vaccine, there might never be a silver bullet for the coronavirus disease. A report by Wycliffe Okech puts that into perspective.
In a virtual news briefing from the UN body's headquarters in Geneva, the WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus and WHO Emergencies Head Mike Ryan exhorted all nations to rigorously enforce health measures to contain the spread of COVID-19. Tedros expressed optimism in the vaccines under trial, but warned that there is no silver bullet at the moment, and there might never be. The warning comes as more than 18 million people around the world were diagnosed with the new coronavirus as of Monday. Almost 11 million have recovered and nearly 690,000 have died. The U.S. is in a new phase of the outbreak, with infections extraordinarily widespread in rural areas as well as cities, a White House expert said, as cases hit 4.6 million with more than 155,000 deaths reported. The United Kingdom is set to roll out millions of rapid COVID-19 tests after criticism of insufficient tests, especially in nursing homes. The government says capacity will be boosted at hospitals, care homes and laboratories starting from next week. Greece will make mask wearing compulsory on the decks of ferries sailing to its islands, extending the requirement beyond interior spaces after a recent spike in coronavirus infections. Last week, Greece made mask wearing mandatory in all indoor public spaces and also in outdoor spaces where proper social distancing cannot be observed. India's Interior Minister Amit Shah and the chiefs of two big states, Karnataka and Madhya Pradesh, have been hospitalized with COVID-19 as the country's daily cases topped 50,000 for a fifth straight day. Singapore will make more incoming travelers wear an electronic monitoring device to ensure compliance with the coronavirus quarantines as the city-state gradually reopens its borders.
Well, let's take a breather when it comes to matters COVID-19, as well as the expected debate on the division of revenue formula, and just have a breath of fresh air when it comes to celebrating women who are contributing positively to society. And this morning, a story has been told in the Star about a woman named Catherine Adea, who is now the new director of research at WWW, or World Wide Web. And that story is told by this paper. The 52-year-old, who has a PhD from Edinburgh University, clinched this job, and WWW, or World Wide Web, announced this yesterday. And she tells of the story behind her applying even for that job and deciding to defy all odds and just go after this particular position, whose vacancy, by the way, had a 7-page job description. But you know what this woman said, according to her words, is that do not wait to check all the boxes. Check the boxes as you move along. Now, Women in Tech has that story covered for you in the Star this morning. Catherine Adea, congratulations for being the new director of research at the World Wide Web Foundation.
Still sticking with matters to do with technology, let's go back to the main story that was here. Still is here on the front page of the Daily Nation about a Kenyan family that stole billions in the U.S. Now, members of a Kenyan family stole over $2 billion from taxpayers in the U.S., which is said to be one of the biggest cyber crimes in history, one of the biggest cyber haste that has been witnessed. People on social media are calling it Kenya haste. Money Heist. If you've watched Money Heist, you would understand. But the story talks of Bita. When you get into the story, the last year in November, Interpol actually reached out to the National Police Service seeking information in regards to some Kenyans that were wanted in the U.S. for allegedly committing fraud offenses, and one of the names that were released were Edwin Sila Nyumu, a man who had been on the run. Now, it is said that Nyumu and his family were behind a US-based cybercrime syndicate that laundered hundreds of millions of dollars in the country, but had managed to escape FBI and hide in Mlolongo here in Machakos. They are believed to have stolen over $2 billion in a tax fraud. This is what was established by the Daily here. Now this Kenyan family has been scamming through the web and managed to bilk millions of dollars and send them to Kenya without raising an alarm in what is believed to be 12 years since the first name was featured in Interpol's list. So more of that story is there. You can read about how this family managed to steal over 2 billion Kenya shillings from the U.S. taxpayers, have evaded the Interpol and the FBI in a 12-year span that they have been on the run, as the law enforcement officers have been looking for them.
Now, still keeping up with matters technology, and now going after the legal system, where policing goes digital with the new look occurrence book. Nakasarani and Buruburu police stations are the first to fully automate the case management. Now, the new policy digital occurrence book was launched yesterday in Nairobi. Captured there, you can see Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i there. Among the pictured in that particular insert there, I don't know if you can ably capture that, says that in that particular move is that the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nadine Haji, and Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kenoti, put up a united front yesterday during the function presided over by Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i there. Now, Kasarani and Buruburu stations are the first to fully automate their OBs. If you have ever gone to report an issue in any police station, you remember you have to fill in, it is registered in an OB book, and you're given an OB number, and you follow up with it, But now the new system will have a provision where police officers will take photos of suspects before they are booked into the police cells. Yeah, something like similar what you see, on this crime series and dramas that you see. And this new feature is also aimed at addressing cases that are where suspects claim to have been tortured or assaulted by the police. Now, speaking during the launch of the Utumishi project at the Buruburu police station, Interior CS Fred Matiang'i said the digitization system will help loopholes used by officers in manhandling and mishandling cases, manhandling suspects and mishandling cases, and in turn frustrate Kenyans. A report by Kamche Medza puts that into perspective.
The launch of the Utumishi Digital Occurrence Book, or Digital OB, will help police officers at the stations do away with the bulk paperwork normally involved in the recording of reported cases. Similarly, Kenyans will not necessarily have to visit stations to record crime reports. Interior CS Fred Matiang'i says all officers are expected to embrace the new system to ensure efficiency in service delivery.
This platform. Those who then cannot work on this platform will give us enough reasons to relieve them from our service so that we deal with police officers who are willing to serve Kenyans in a modern environment. I do not think that we are going to have a lot of arguments about that.
CS Matiang'i noted that cases of missing case files and delayed investigations have marred case management, further frustrating Kenyans.
There's an animal in this country called the file. That animal has been a cause of misery everywhere. It's the basis on which people seek rent. There's some funny thing called the file. You know, nunua chai, file ipatikane, ongea na wazee, ili file ipatikane. Hawa wazee sasa lazima wapotee, because you see, the story of the file, I actually am standing here today in the presence of you, Inspector General, DPP, and everybody, as a proud citizen of this country, to say we have begun the final funeral to that thing called the file.
Security agents present at the launch say the OB digitization, which is being piloted in Nairobi, will improve police accountability and transparency. The OB digitization involves a whole automation of police operations, which has already seen all police officers registered biometrically. Police operations will involve use of desktop and laptops by officers at the station, handheld devices by patrol officers, and forensic and criminal mapping and analysis in the investigation department.
Members of the public will be able to submit reports to officers in the field, and the report is reflected at the station instantly for action. No more loss of police reported cases. There will be proper case management, proper management of crime, since in the system will be able to analyze the prevalent crimes in each police station.
The project will also guarantee seamless records keeping, cultivate collaboration between various police stations in Nairobi County and beyond.
So far, 210 desktops have been installed in police stations in Nairobi, while 10,181 iPads have been issued to police officers across the country.
I want to emphasize that this software is made by our own people. The devices that are used are locally assembled, and clear indication that we are really going to be self-sufficient.
Cases of delayed reports as well as delayed investigations by security officers are now expected to go down as the project is rolled out across the country. Kamche Menza for Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
So let's move on to yet another story covered by the Star this morning. It's good news after 23 years in court. Now, the Environment Court has reclaimed land belonging to the Kenya Meteorological Department. Now, this is a piece of land valued at around 5 billion Kenya shillings. It's a 53-acre piece of land in Nairobi's industrial area, valued at around 5 billion Kenya shillings. The tussle has been in court for 23 years, and finally, the land has been returned back to its rightful owner, that is the Kenya Meteorological Department. Now, this is a major win for EACC that has been at the center stage, trying level best to have this land reclaimed or given back to the Met Department. And you will find that story covered by the Star this morning, even as you appreciate quotes from people like the Anti-Graft Agency CEO, that is Twalib Mbarak, before the court, and of course some of the issues that have been covered in earnest in this particular story, even detailing some of the companies that were behind this particular grabbing. So the Star this morning has that story for you.
All right. Getting back to the Daily Nation, this is in regards to one of the world's wonders, the wildebeest migration, which is a spectacle at its peak, but COVID-19 has halted visitors and money. Now, behind the most sought-after experience, and this is a global experience now between Kenya and her neighbor Tanzania, it is a legion of tour guides, hotel owners, bead makers, and tented camp owners who are wishing things were different, although the annual spectacle spelled hope for the tourism sector. Individual businessmen admitted that it has not been lucrative for them as it has been in the previous years. Now, this year is set to be, of course, we are in that high season already, but due to COVID-19 and travel restrictions, things might not be as upbeat as it has been in previous years, but it is said that by Sunday, over 13,500 private vehicles had already entered the Mara and are looking to take part and, just witness this wonder of the world. But of course, things are set to be a bit low as opposed to how things have been in previous years, where, they're saying by now there usually were over 28,000 visitors who had already set camp at the Mara. But this year, things will absolutely be different due to COVID-19 and travel restrictions.
Now, away from matters tourism there, and when a day we just marked the Rangers Day, that is, so far the country has also lost 5 rangers. This is according to the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. Let's go back to that particular story about that questionable land that has gone back to the Kenya Meteorological Department. Now, when delivering that particular ruling, is that Justice Obaga went ahead to revoke the titles which had been issued to Beacon Towers Limited, Hillbrow Properties Limited, Brentwood Traders, Varun Industrial Credit Limited, and Pambo Properties Limited for the 53.4 acres on grounds that the titles were irregularly acquired. Now, interestingly, the judge found that all the 5 companies had the same directors, and that there was submission that on how the letters of grants were processed in a record 2 days between January the 12th and 13th in 1998. This particular land, you must be asking yourself, is where is it situated? Now, this questionable land is in industrial area of Mombasa Road and stretches from behind the Panari Hotel to Enterprise Road and contains several industrial buildings and warehouses the companies had constructed and let out to other entities. So then what happens to these people who had rent out in these properties? Are they going to be evicted? Remember, the Kenya Meteorological Department has been given right to claim to take over possession. We'll be keenly focusing on that issue. And now focusing on matters of land and issues of skirmishes is that 12 people, a report by Ben Troy there says that 12 people have been arrested in Nkararo area, Transmara, West Narok County following renewed clashes in the area. Now, according to Narok County Commissioner Samuel Kimiti, those arrested were armed with bows and arrows and are suspected to have set on fire a sugarcane plantation in the area, creating fear and tension. So far, 4 people have lost their life in Narok.
According to Narok County Commissioner Samuel Kimiti, the 12 were arrested by the GSU and the Rapid Deployment Unit officers as they plan to carry out more attacks.
Kuna watu wamejitokeza wakifikiria hakuna sheria nchi hii, wakifikiria watu hawataki kuishi. Saa hii sheria itachukuliwa kali sana kwa mhalifu yoyote, uwe mwanasiasa, uwe mwananchi wa kawaida, uwe mchochezi. Saa hii polisi tumewaeleza watu wachikwe, wapelekwe kotini.
Committee has warned that those fueling the skirmishes will face the full force of the law and cautioned residents against arming themselves.
Kiwa hawana kazi ya kufanya, waende wakafanye kazi. Kuna kazi nyingi ya kufanywa jela. Na jela zetu hazijafungwa. Wakati hii tunapambana na shida ya coronavirus, watu wengine ati wanachukua michale. Saa hii kule Transmara, saa hii watu 12 wameshikwa wakiwa na nyuta 3 na mikuki 2 na michale 12 na hao sasa wataelekezwa kotini.
The area has been under a 4 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew which was announced in April by Rift Valley Regional Commissioner George Natembea. Reports indicate that the renewed clashes were triggered by the killing of a teenage boy by suspected cattle rustlers in Masai Mau on Monday. Meanwhile, 14 suspects linked to the skirmishes that rocked the eastern Mau forest have been remanded for 10 days in police custody. Nakuru Senior Resident Magistrate Lilian Arika remanded the suspects, including a former member of County Assembly Joseph Miangari, to allow police conclude investigations. By Saturday evening, at least 6 people had been killed and several others left nursing arrow injuries in Elbagon and Narok Level 5 hospitals following the clashes after members of the two rival communities fought over ownership of land on the edges of eastern Mau Forest.
Sisi ndio tutatoa amani. Si mtu ndio unangoja akuja kutolea amani. Watoto wetu amehangaika kwa barabara. Wasee ya Kipsigis na Hokie, mushikane muue kitu kimoja.
Bwana Yesu asifiwe.
Leaders from Nakuru County, led by Area Governor Lee Kenyanjui, are in the meantime urging communities in the area to coexist peacefully and embrace dialogue and reconciliation, as conflict over land can only be sorted through legal processes and not clashes.
So tumepigana huko nyumbani, tukafurushana, alafu hatimaye tukajikuta wote wapi? Si ndio? Hata nasikia mnashirikiana kupika chakula pamoja. Si ni kweli? Kama ni mambo ya cutline, wachia serikali. Kama ni mambo ya title deed na caveat, si hao watoto wanapatiana hiyo caveat. Si hao ndio wanaondoa hiyo caveat. Mambo ya serikali wachia nani? Serikali. Kama uko na shida na serikali, enda kwa huyu county commissioner, kuja kwa ofisi yetu, tumana na wazee walete mambo yao. Lakini unapochukua mshale ama panga kwa mtoto ama familia kama hii, ama unaenda kuchoma nyumba ya mwingine, kweli ataweza kutatua mambo ya caveat hiyo family?
Shifting gears now to matters agriculture and focus on sugar, where the Star now reports that Western and Rift Valley MCAs have backed the ban on sugar imports, and they say sugarcane is now being harvested and delivered to factories. And this particular story there, as written by Callistas Lushetu, says that the county legislators lauded President Uhuru Kenyatta and Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya for the ban on illegal importation of sugar, saying the move will help revitalize the sector. Now, the 9 MCAs addressed the press in Webuye, where they say that they want to take this opportunity to express gratitude to the president. But remember, this is a follow-up now to what the president said sometimes in February when he was addressing the nation on an economic recovery plan that he has together with his administration, focusing on key sectors, especially within the agriculture sector, and sugar was one of those. Now, that story is covered by the Star this morning when it comes to the ban on sugar imports.
Has also been is actually on the front page of the County News, a pull-out segment of the Daily Nation, where MCAs sound alarm at illegal import of sugar. Now, 10 ward representatives from Western Kenya have actually raised the alarm on the continued illegal shipment of sugar into the country after the government had imposed this ban to protect the local industry. They actually did, however, go on to urge the president to petition the Interior Ministry to reinforce its borders so that to weed out the cartels that are continuing to benefit from the illicit trade. And of course, this was a petition, or rather a plea from MCAs that are drawn from the sugar-growing regions of Kenya, who pointed out that the unscrupulous business people are the ones who were taking advantage of the COVID-19 restrictions to smuggle in sugar. And of course, this in regards to the 350,000 tons of sugar that Kenya is allowed to import from COMESA. And one MCA, actually, Mr. Ramadan Ali, said that it was very unfortunate that the imports are happening at a time where Kenya is having a surplus of the commodity. And of course, this is heavily affecting Kenya's manufacturers here. And of course, this is as a result of the unscrupulous businessmen who are taking advantage of the COVID-19 restrictions to smuggle in the sweetener.
Now, still keeping up with matters sugar, and is that government will today publish the names of companies that have expressed interest in leasing on long-term basis 5 state-owned sugar factories. A report by Benson Rioba there indicates that this comes 2 weeks after governors from the Lake Region Economic Bloc called for suspension of the leasing process to pave way for more consultations with relevant stakeholders on the privatization process amid the claims on issues of sugar importation. Here are the details.
About a fortnight ago, governors from the Lake Region Economic Bloc called for the suspension of the long-term leasing of government-owned sugar companies to allow for more consultations with key stakeholders to iron out any pending issues. The governors alleged that some outstanding issues that were yet to be addressed would later disadvantage farmers.
Expression of interest on leasing of the state-owned sugar companies is suspended until all parties agree on the consultative process. This is very important because since we have traveled this journey together of analyzing the sugar industry and agreeing on what needs to be done, we improve the industry and put it on a sustainable path.
However, the government maintains that the list of companies that have shown interest to list Chemilil, Muhoroni, Miwani, Nzoia and Shoni sugar companies will be made public on Tuesday.
That the ministry is committed to a transparent, credible and accountable process. We want to attract and finally secure serious investors worthy enough to be partners with the government in the revival of the sugar industry.
The Ministry of Agriculture maintains that wide consultations with governors from sugar-growing regions were held and all issues were resolved.
We've been going through a rigorous stakeholder engagement and consultations. And I want to assure you that specifically we have been having meetings with governors from the sugar belt, and we are totally in sync on this particular matter.
The government says only bidders with adequate resources to turn around the fortunes of the mills will be considered. Benson Rioba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Yeah, so let's move on to yet another story covered by The Star this morning. A bit of focus now on the counties where a HIV-positive man is now to spend life in prison for defiling daughter. And a medical test showed the girl had been sexually assaulted several times. Now, this story, as covered here by this particular daily, says that on July 24th, Justice Martha Koome, Daniel Musinga and Jamila Mohammed dismissed their appeal, saying that incest was illegal. And as much as it had been proven that incest happened, because once this particular ruling was given on the 25th of September 2014, this particular man went ahead and appealed. Now, this appeal has been thrown out by these judges, that is Justices Martha Koome, Daniel Musinga and Jamila Mohammed, who dismissed the appeal, saying that incest was proven in this particular case. Now, that unfortunate story is covered on The Star this morning.
Still keeping up with the county news, we go to Kisumu, where a man aged 48 years old has been arrested for allegedly killing his teenage daughter. Now, police in Muhoroni have arrested this man after they suspected him of killing his teenage daughter, and he was arrested Sunday evening when he was allegedly planning to secretly bury the body of Violet Awor, aged 15 years. Who was a class 7 pupil at Nyalea Primary School. It is stated that Mr. Morris Owino, beat one of his daughters to death and injured another. The two sisters are said to have left home a week ago to go visit their uncle without their father's permission, and when they returned home on Sunday, their father pounced on them, beating them with a stick. He left the younger one, the 14-year-old Sharon Adhiambo, with some serious injuries to the head, while the older sister, Violet Awor, died on the spot. Now, the police got this information, got wind of the information, and stormed the homestead and arrested the suspect Sunday evening.
That story also has been highlighted on the Standard this morning on page 2. titled their family tragedy. Now, according to Deputy County Commissioner Eric Wanyonyi, said the law enforcement who got wind of the matter and arrested the suspect, and by the time the police officer and the area chief got to his home, the suspect was in the process of indeed burying their daughter. The deceased, a standard 7 pupil, is said to have sustained serious injuries on the head and abdomen. This comes at a time when we have already received statistics that gender-based violence has been on the rise, especially in that since Kenya confirmed its first case of COVID-19, and some of the experts that we've been having on board on our Thursday show saying that the more time the children are spending at home, then they are at risk, of several forms of violence, including psychological, emotional, and also sexual violence. Now a daughter is dead. I tend to think that was reacting it was a knee-jerk reaction, and in my heart of hearts, I don't think that parent would actually just want to kill their son or daughter like that. Something must have triggered them, but hey, that's not an excuse of taking a life. Now, still focusing on stories that are making headlines in the counties, a report by Timothy Kipnusu indicates that police in Busia have seized 3,112 stones of bang worth 1.5 million shillings following a raid in a store in Mundika Township. Details of this and other stories in our county's news roundup.
Police in Busia County are pursuing suspects alleged to be behind sale of illegal and contraband goods. The security agents raided a store in Mundika area within Busia town and seized 3,112 tons of bang packed in 13 sacks. The officers also ransacked a warehouse in Marachi Estate where 370 cartons each containing 24 bottles of assorted alcohol from Uganda was recovered. Busia County Commander John Nyoike has warned smugglers that their days are numbered, even as the department beefed up surveillance along the border.
I want to warn those in such businesses, and my message to them is that we are going to be very firm on them. Goods are coming into our country due to the porosity of our border.
Elsewhere, Kisumu County Public Service Board Chairman Charles Karani and his deputy Edward Gochung sustained injuries after goons raided their offices to protest against the recruitment of enforcement officers. 2 members of staff, among them the secretary to the board chairman, were also injured in the mid-morning Monday attack. The goons, who were armed with machetes, were demanding to know why some of the youths who applied for the positions did not receive their appointment letters.
And I think this should percolate down to county governments. Any government building must have an administrative police officer because we pay taxes for that.
And irate villagers in Kisii Central Sub-County, Kisii County, have invaded and displaced a family of 11 from their piece of land for alleged harboring chicken thief. The family of Joash Okinyi from Tangi Village, Nyabiosi Sub-Location, Birongo Location, was forced to spend the night in the cold before a philanthropist came to their aid. Property worth over 500,000 shillings, including houses, crops, was stolen and vandalized.
Tangu siku hiyo sijui hiyo watoto mahali wako. Hiyo watoto walikuwa hapa, walienda kwa miji yao. Sasa jivu anasema hii watoto mimi nileta hiyo watoto wa wenyewe. Na hiyo watoto walirudi kwa manyumba yao.
In Kembu, controversial blogger Edgar Obare has been released on 100,000 shillings bail or an option of 300,000 shillings bond after he was charged with unlawfully publishing private and personal details from the passport of YouTuber Natalia Githinji without her consent. Obare was arraigned at the Kiambu Law Courts and pleaded not guilty to the charges. Finally, the Internal Affairs Unit of the National Police Service has received a donation of ICT equipment from the U.S. Embassy to improve the investigative ability of the unit and overall management of its offices.
The ICT support received today will go a long way in ensuring efficient execution of this constitutional mandate.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Timothy Kipnusu.
So we continue with newspaper review, and I would like to throw it now to Jane Wamboi, who has something for us. in the business section of the dailies this morning. I mean, it's 7:55. We've got 5 minutes to wind this up. So, Jane, over to you.
All right, before we get to sports news, let's have a quick look at some business news. And this is in regards to mitumba dealers here in Kenya. Now, remember there was a ban that was put on any mitumba import of mitumba second-hand clothes that was put in early April. Now, mitumba dealers now calling for the lift on the ban of imports. And second-hand clothes and shoe dealers stare at a bleak future following the stoppage of imports for 4 months now. And, of course, most of them have depleted their stocks by now and are urging the government to reconsider the ban so as to protect their livelihoods. Now, the ban was actually imposed by Trade CS Betty Minor early April to minimize the risk of coronavirus infections. This has, however, starved the supply chains, hurting business prospects for over 2 million traders. Now, yesterday, the Mitumba Association of Kenya asked Ms. Minor to lift the ban, saying that the importers were ready to comply with all COVID-19 health protocols to ensure products in the second-hand clothes market are safe for consumption by all users. The association's chairperson, Ms. Teresa Njenga, said that they had met all the requirements, adding that the delay in lifting the ban was ruining the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Kenyans and approximately 35,000 traders others are indirectly dependent on the sector, are also suffering the consequences of this ban on second-hand clothes.
Now, still, as we wrap up matters of business on the financial standard segment, a lot has been said about retailer Tuskys. Now, it seems that there's a detailed report. They're captured losing the grip of a family jewel, curse of retailers. First, it was Uchumi, then Nakumatt, now Tuskys. Seems to be going down a well-trodden path for local supermarket chains. Now, that particular report looks into errors that have turned Kenya into a retailer's graveyard. That you can find out on your pullout of the Standard this morning on the financial standard segment. Bringing us to matters sports, where we focus first on international. Let's first go local, where how KPL veterans continue to defy age in the twilight of their careers. There, if you are into sports, this is quite an interesting article there. Yesterday, we were looking at the men and women who still continue, heroes, the athletes and male and female who continue doing Kenya proud. Now, this particular article on that page 34 and 35 of the Standard indicate there how KPL veterans continue to defy odds in their careers. Can you identify any one of those people pictured there? I would want to draw your attention to James Sifuma, who is aged 35, and he plays a defender in club. He's a defender, but he is already retired. He played for Sony Sugar then in his heydays, and he also played for Nairobi City Stars and Sofa Parker, as well as Ingwe, AFC Leopards, as well as Kakamega Homeboys. Further on, there is Alan Owanga, yes, 34 years of age, position striker, club Kakamega Homeboys. Previous clubs that he held, Tusker, Petro Atletico, yes, in Angola, and Sofa Parker as well. We also have Charles Okwemba, age 40 years, a position he held was middle fielder, and he retired. He played for Shabana, Eldoret KCC, Tusker Iron Sports in Rwanda. Also, we have Charles Odero there, 40 years, position he held defender middle fielder. He's currently retired, and he played for Assyrian and Chemelil Sugar. Then we have one who seems to be the oldest according to this particular report that has been captured on the Standard this morning. John Baraza, aged 44 years, position he used to play a striker. He's currently retired. Hendy played for Nzoia Sugar. He also played for Yanga in Tanzania and Police in Drija, Malaysia, as well as Rayon Sports in Rwanda. He's the current coach of Sofa Parker and a true definition of a KPL legend. And the former, well, we're talking about Charles Odero, who happens to be 40 years, is the former Chemelil Sugar captain, played over 400 KPL matches for almost 2 decades into the top flight to football before venturing into coaching in 2017. Detailed report there of how KPL veterans continue to defy age in the twilight of their careers. Captured there on page 34 and 35 of today's issue of the Standard. Still focusing on sports, Champs League ready to resume at long last. Now, wounded Chelsea have no time to leak FA Cup wounds inflicted by Arsenal as they face Bayern on Saturday. Now is that both competitions were frozen in March as the coronavirus pandemic took hold across the continent, while European football governing body acted swiftly to move the Euro 2020 back a year for a long time. It is unclear how it would manage to complete its 2 landmark club competitions. Remember, more details in regard to what is happening in the sporting arena regionally and internationally, you can all find that on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Now, to just give us a recap, is that Arsenal coach Mikel Arteta is reportedly ready to offload up to 9 players as he seeks a fund to rebuild his squad ahead of the next season. Now, Arteta's transfer plans were handed a shot in the arm following the qualification of the Europa League after beating Chelsea 2-1 in an FA Cup final on Saturday. Bernardo Kumu has details on that. Away from matters of soccer there, let's go to, the Grand Prix is that Lewis Hamilton took an extraordinary victory in a dramatic finish at the Grand Prix, and despite suffering a puncture on his last lap. This is according to a report that has been prepared by Frederick Mwoki. Points. The Finn finished 11th and dropped to 30 points behind Hamilton in the title race, a potentially devastating blow to his hopes so early in the season that truncated by the coronavirus. McLaren's Carlos Sainz, a third driver to suffer a left front puncture like his Hamilton's on his last lap, and he dropped from the 4th place to 13th. Ferrari Charles Leclerc was promoted from the 4th to the final podium spot by the late drama. Those are pictures from that particular race there, the British Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton took an extraordinary victory in a dramatic finish. That brings a cap to matters sports this morning, and as I mentioned earlier, more details are all available on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Now, to just give you a recap of the stories that we're going to be keenly focusing on, we're going to be focusing on the direction that the Senate is going to take this morning in regard to the issue of revenue sharing. Remember, this comes amid warnings from Jubilee Party against 3 of their leaders. That is none other than Murkomen and Sakaja. Title there on the front page of the Standard that has been captured: Murkomen, Sakaja on the crosshairs. Now, party discipline. Jubilee Vice Chairman Murathe warns of disciplinary action against senators who conspired under one Kenya movement banner to shoot down the county revenue bill. If I can just quote what the Vice Chairman there of Jubilee said, is that we are not yet done. We will deal with the senators for going against the party position. They will have themselves to blame for their
parochial decisions, and we will kick them out of the party. Remember, both Senator Murkomen and Sakaja that have been named are not nominated senators, but rather elected. What does the law say about that particular issue? We'll be keeping tabs on that. Well, also there's been a lot that has been kept, there's a lot of anxiety and also hopes up as Raila returns from a medical leave straight into revenue and BBI talks. We take a short break, but in return we're going to be focusing on how major roads are looking this Tuesday morning. I'm Regina Manyara, wishing you a great day ahead. And at 5 minutes past 8 a.m., time for our fast traffic link this morning. Our focus being on Thika Super Highway simply because of that bridge, around Survey area. So we basically want to look at how that is impacting and affecting traffic this morning. So let's just look at the traffic beginning from Kasarani around TRM before we actually get to that specific area. So this is how the road is looking like this morning in terms of traffic as you head over to the city center. The typical, or basically what you'd expect to see, is also just what we're witnessing this early morning. Traffic beginning to build up right at around that roundabout. This is at the Kasarani roundabout, specifically around the Kasarani police station. This is also just on the lane that is heading to the city center. And just as I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago, this is basically what you'd expect to see in this early morning, especially if you're heading over to the CBD. And that's exactly also what is happening. This is around the Roy Sambu roundabout heading over to the city center. Again, also, this is one of those busy roundabouts. If you look at it, just like, major roundabouts, when you normally look at this same road or even other major roads. So normally this is again also one of those busy roundabouts. There's a shopping mall, there's a police station, there's a bus terminus around this area. So ultimately, the reason as to why I would expect to see gridlock is again just because of those reasons. And that is also basically what we are seeing. Just before I move to another area, looking at how this road is doing this morning, again, that has, changed altogether. In the first couple of minutes, it was just orange all through, indicating that traffic is just beginning to slightly build up, or if you may say a manageable kind of traffic. But as of now, things have changed, and as you head over to the CBD, moving at a pretty slow pace. But then again, also, I've just given you the reasons as to why that is happening around this area and specifically around that roundabout. But then again, Thika Road is one of those busy roads, given the fact that it also serves residents that come from the outskirts of Nairobi. You look at all those other counties of,
When we moved from analog to digital, we took the opportunity to share our talanta. And the rise of local radio represented our voices mtaani. And now, in these difficult times, free educational shows are helping our children learn from home.
Mawasiliano kwetu, nguvu kwako. Communications Authority of Kenya. Opening your world.
Embakasi Utawala tuko locked. Ungem Utanyahururu Kasuku Massive.
Jeshi ya Nyeri Coast Maua na Kuru ko locked mbaya.
Kigumo Ward na ambao wote wako ndani ya KBC Channel 1.
Akulaliki Wednesday bila the ref.
Mbotela Auta Idara Kitengela.
Kiambu County 33 Pipeline Meru anawakilisha.
Rongai Maboxa pale go down. Karatina Auta Mlolongo wana enjoy show. Lare Sub County Auta Githurai 45. Lanet Barracks tuko ndani yake. Okongo Auta Carnation Maragwa Seti
Nairobi.
Thika wako locked mbaya sana.
Watu wangu wa Nakuru Ngwaro.
Auta Gilgil. Live kutoka Mazeras Bahati Massive.
Embo Thika Massive.
Siaya Shikambi Kakamega Bungoma County.
Kusia Boda Kisumu City. Malindi yote iko ndani ya the ref.
When I'm in Kenya,
and tune in to the rave. Get your mind brave, focus, conscious.
Kenya.
East Africa.
Right.
Keep it locked.
Calling out to Africa.
11 minutes past 8. Let's continue with our traffic link. This morning, we were focusing on Thika Super Highway. And as I was telling you earlier, when you just leave the Roysambu roundabout, as you head over to the city center, traffic really beginning to build up there. And also the reason as to why this morning we'll be focusing on this road is because of that footbridge installation that is happening, especially around Survey area, that, led to a bit of a gridlock, early morning yesterday and also a bit of today. So just before we get to that area, again, around this is around the Roysambu towing services roundabout. Things are changing a bit there. Earlier on, it was red all through, indicating that it was just moving at a pretty slow pace. But at least now things are not looking so bad at all, because clearly it is now moving. So again, what this means is that if you're coming from Mwiki, from Kasarani, from Roysambu, then clearly, as of now, it is the best time for you to do that, because in as much as, yes, there's a bit of a traffic gridlock, but at least it's manageable. That is why we are seeing that orange color. But then also, this is only specifically on the lane that is leaving the estates as you head over to the city center through this roundabout. That is just where the traffic begins to slightly, and again, it's very important for me to mention that it's just beginning to slightly build up. So what this ultimately means that at least it is a manageable kind of traffic, and also at least it's going to be a smooth sailing for you if you're coming from these areas heading about your businesses to the city center, or even any kind of activities along Thika Super Highway. On the other lane, so the one that is leaving the city center, again, just a smooth sailing for you, no traffic at all. So it's very different from this other one where traffic just begins to slightly build up. On this other one, there's no traffic at all. So what this means, and also what you're seeing from these colors, is that it's moving at a really fast pace. So again, what this means is that if you're coming from Gara, from city center, or even any areas around Thika Super Highway, heading to the estates that are adjoined to this route, or even the outskirts of Nairobi, then clearly, again, this is the best time for you to do that. But also, I will just be trying to look at some alternative routes, especially for those heading to the CBD or going about their businesses and activities this early morning, given the fact that Thika Road is one of those busy roads, and especially in terms of traffic, sometimes it becomes a bit unmanageable. And when you look at some specific areas, Ngara area, Survey area, which is going to be our focus, so I'll again also be trying to look at some good alternative routes for those that are going about their businesses. But as of now, leaving that area, heading all the way to the city center right now, no traffic at all, moving at a pretty fast pace, just gridlock again around Garden City Mall. But also, this is again one of those busy areas, and like I keep telling you all the time, in places or areas where it's either bus terminals, there's the large scale businesses, there's malls, this is how we'd expect the roads to be looking like. And clearly, as of now, just drawing from this map, that is how it is looking like. This is around Garden City. And also the interesting bit is that it is only on the outer lane as well as the two inner lanes. So what that means, on the other outer lane, the one that is leaving the CBD, as you head over to the estates, there's no traffic at all. Just gridlock only specifically on the outer lanes as you leave the estates, as you head over to the city center. But again, it's very usual. That's what we'd expect to see in this early morning hour. But also this means that if you're coming from Roysambu, again from Mwiki, from Kasarani, using this specific area before we get to a fast alternative route, then you may just have to make do with this traffic around Garden City Mall, because clearly as of now it is not looking good at all. In fact, on some major parts it's not moving, just at a standstill. And then you may just wonder why you're seeing this cocktail of colors here, from orange to red to maroon. Why you're seeing the orange is indicating that traffic has begun to slightly build up, so just showing that at least it's a manageable kind of traffic. traffic, where you're seeing the red is indicating that traffic is moving at a pretty slow pace. And where you're seeing the maroon, it's an indicator that it is not moving at all. So that means it is at a standstill. And that is what is happening around Garden City Mall next to Blue Springs as you head over to the city center. So pretty much of what is happening along Thika Road, especially just past Roysambu, is just heavy traffic. In fact, next to Kenya Utalii College, it is not even moving at all. At least around Garden City, there was a bit of a reprieve. But as of now, when you just pass that area next to Utalii College, and this is again, just like how you're seeing around Garden City, this is on both the inner lanes as well as the outer lane as you leave the estates. Just unbearable kind of traffic, not moving at a standstill. But I also mentioned that there's some works ongoing around along Thika Super Highway. We've seen the first bridge that was already installed along with the area. There are 3 others that were slated to be installed. One at Survey area, which is actually the ongoing works. There's one around Garden City. There's one to be installed at Mangu area. And then again, this is just all in a bid of the Kenyan Urban Roads Authorities trying to ensure that in as much as, yes, they are reconstructing roads, making it easy for both public and private vehicles, at least they also make it easy for pedestrians. And that is why you've seen actually on most roads which are under reconstruction, they are ensuring that they put the NMT, or if you may, the non-motorized transport system, which is inclusive of pedestrian walkways as well as cyclist lanes. And in addition to that, they are also ensuring that at least they erect footbridges. That is why you're also seeing this ongoing works happening along Thika Super Highway. This is going to be probably the second footbridge to be installed, the one that is now being installed around Survey area. It has stalled for quite some time. The only one that has already been installed is the only one at Witivia area. So far, Thika Super Highway has about 18 footbridges. These four that are being installed were just earmarked again to make it easy for pedestrians, and the second reason to reduce on the traffic flow along this route, because as I have kept mentioning that this is one of those busy roads. Now there's this one area which serves as a very good alternative route, which is at the Pangani intersection. But even, that route being a good alternative route, clearly as of now, it is not looking good at all. This is just, past Pangani Girls as you use Juja Road going to the city center. This is how this area is looking like. Remember, this is again one of those good alternative routes for those that ply Thika Super Highway, going about the activities and the businesses in the city center. It wasn't looking so good in the first couple of minutes because there was really heavy gridlock there. But as of now, it is, opened up. So this again means if you are coming from Juja Road, from Outer Ring Road, using this intersect as you head over to the city center is really a good smooth sailing for you. If you're also coming from Thika Super Highway, then you may just have to make do the traffic around Garden City Mall, around Utalii College, but past those areas, you can use Pangani intersection as you enjoying to Juja Road heading over to the city center, because along Thika Super Highway past those areas, then it is also quite unmanageable. This is just next to as you head over to Muranga Road, heading all the way to Fig Tree to Ngara. Those are again two areas where traffic is really quite unbearable in this early morning hour. So this intersect here, just as it enjoins to Juja Road, going all the way to Ngara from Thika Super Highway, this is a good route that you can use as an alternative route, because clearly as of now, in as much as yes, traffic has begun to slightly build up there, and in some areas even just at a standstill, but at least it is quite manageable. It is unlike if you tend to use the Thika Road as you head about your businesses. This is one of those routes that you can use as your alternative routes if you're coming from Thika Road or even from Outer Ring Road, Juja Road, as you head over to the city center. So let's just keep up with the Thika Super Highway. This is past this area. This is past Pangani, trying to see how this road is looking like in terms of traffic. Doesn't really look so bad. So that means the only area where there's heavy traffic gridlock is just around Utalii College, next to Muthaiga at Survey area because of that bridge installation, as well as the first area which you looked at. This is around the Roysambu roundabout. So that's that this morning in terms of traffic. Our focus being on Thika Super Highway, also just trying to look at some good alternative routes for you. So probably in the next link up segment, we'll be trying to see how this road will be doing like again in terms of traffic.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for that updating as far as how the traffic situation is right here in the city, Nairobi. Right now, let's begin a conversation around testing because there has been a lot of concern shared on this particular area, not only in Kenya, not only in Africa, but across the globe. I mean, remember that statement that came forth from President Trump a couple of weeks ago, that the reason why the US is reporting so many cases is because they're doing so much of testing? Well, maybe we'll get to understand the science behind that. I've got experts who will be delving into this very matter. And right now, let me introduce them. I'll begin with Dr. Samuel Omolo. He is a disease diagnostics expert, and he recently was appointed as the territory manager for Africa for 8 Biotech Company. Welcome to the program, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Kenya, and joining us live from Singapore is Dr. Will Chiang, I hope I got that right, who is the business director at AIT Biotech. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us live from Singapore. Let me begin with you, Dr. Omolo. When you assess the testing capacity of the nation this far, that is Kenya, what do you make of it?
Thank you very much for hosting me in your show. It's a great privilege to talk to the nation about disease diagnostics and testing. And the current situation in the Republic is getting advanced, and at least we are somewhere in terms of testing. The key testing technology that we're using as the benchmark is now polymerase chain reaction, which is called PCR, and the rapid testing has not yet come into play. So the main test that we have is still in specific places, in centralized testing centers, and it's not everywhere in the country. So I can say we are doing well in terms of testing, but we still need to decentralize testing into district and sub-county hospitals.
How do we do that?
The key thing, I think COVID-19 has presented an opportunity for us as a country and internationally, because we were not prepared for this kind of pandemic. It's not the first pandemic we've had. We've had the Spanish flu back in the 1950s, which killed almost 50 million people. That was more lethal than this one. But what we can do, and the opportunity we missed earlier on, was to invest in infrastructure in terms of equipment, equipping our laboratories with advanced PCR machines. But now what we need to upscale this is buy more diagnostic equipment, PCR equipment, and set up centers for excellence in testing across the country. You may not do it once, but the way the low-lying fruit which you can tap into is having a high-throughput equipment, which can do so many samples within even 8 hours.
But you see now, time and resources are factors to consider in as far as what you're saying is concerned. You hold that thought, and as far as those two are concerned, let me bring in Dr. Will. Thank you so much for joining us live from Singapore. Maybe you can bring us up to speed with how the Asian territory is handling testing this far.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the show this moment. Just like my colleague Sam mentioned, the testing is the key, most critical component of this to contain the COVID-19 outbreak. Like what we do here in most Asian countries, I'll take Singapore as an example. We do mass testing. We have ramped up our testing capacity 5, 6, even 10-fold from now compared to before the COVID. So what we do is literally set up the labs. We invest into the infrastructure and invest in people. So we are able to test so many. You can think about that. We cannot see the virus. Only way for us to see the virus is through the testing.
Yeah.
So if you test enough area, you will know where the virus is and how we, to control this situation based on the data.
Okay, you rightfully say that you've been able to test as many people. However, we've been consuming reports where countries like the Philippines, for example, are currently considering lockdowns because of an upsurge when it comes to the numbers of COVID-19. Is as much as testing is important when it comes to the fight against coronavirus, have you established or come across other challenges other than testing in that region?
Well, definitely the resource is very important for testing. I would say other than in Singapore, or maybe in other more domestic Asian countries like Taiwan, Korea, Japan, also China. Other countries doesn't equip enough equipment or testing capacity before the COVID. So in the early stage, they are not able to control that. I'm sure the government didn't want that this situation to get free fall, but they just don't have the resource or couldn't get the resource fast enough to control the situation in the beginning. The downside of the massive testing is definitely, like we talked about, you mentioned the word resource, right? So you have to put enough resource to build out infrastructure to get the test. And second downside is after you have a number, you will take some action. The action normally now we already know is the quarantine or isolation. So it definitely will hit the country for economic wise and also social stability. People will get nervous how they can run their daily life after the quarantine. So that's the downside of that. But again, currently we don't have the cure for COVID-19. We don't have vaccine yet. So quarantine, massive testing, identify where the virus is, and quarantine the cases is the only way to do it now.
And what exactly will it take to build the right infrastructure? Because you mentioned that.
Okay, so the most effective detection method at the moment is PCR. So PCR, I actually bring out some example here. It's just a very compact machine. So do the PCR testing, you need a PCR, real-time PCR machine and extraction. So these two machines, what they do is they actually get the sample. You get the patient sample normally for the COVID-19 is go through the swab sample. So you collect the patient swab sample and go through the extraction. So it means you only extract the DNA or RNA from the sample. You don't want anything else. So once you have the RNA sample, you go into the PCR machine to identify if this patient has COVID-19 virus RNA present in their system. If we receive the signal from the COVID-19 virus, we can identify this person is infected. And the reason everybody using this type of method instead of, you probably heard about so-called rapid test. This one is much sensitive and you can do early detection even without any symptom. So this is currently the gold standard of the COVID-19 testing.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Molo. Let me come to you now. When you assess the situation right here in the country, are we in a position really to have testing go for $10 in a public facility and around $100 in some private facilities? Can we afford that in the first place?
Thank you very much for that good question. That's doable. With upscaling manufacturing and so many companies coming with cutting-edge technology, like the one for AIT Biotech, which is isothermal technology, you are able to reduce on the turnaround time. For example, for isothermal PCR, you're able to do 14, 20 minutes or 40 minutes compared to the traditional 1 hour or 3 hours if you're doing DNA extraction. So with advances in technology and bringing in, shortening the process from RNA extraction to testing, you're able to reduce on cost. And I can assure you this is achievable in the country.
By what margin?
Every company depends on the technology they use, because every chemistry that's used within these kits, for example, the ones I have here, and the patent they have behind it depends on raw material and cost. So it will depend on each country, but we can comfortably achieve $10 per test for this kind of test we're rolling out across the country.
But now you see this is what we are currently charging as a nation. Yes. In public facilities, you will go and be charged around 1,000 Kenya shillings, but you see a majority of Kenyans cannot afford 1,000 Kenya shillings to go for testing. So how exactly are we able to subsidize this cost?
This calls for multifaceted approach. We have organizations across the globe that work, run disease diagnostics behind the scene. If there's a public-private partnership with global donors and people who run programs, let's say, for example, CDC, and the national government also pumping money. So thereabout will have a subsidized price. So someone is taking care of half, and then half is extended to the patient. But above all, you can achieve this using technology by shortening the process. When you shorten the process, for example, use isothermal PCR, which my colleague has mentioned, you're able to cut out on RNA or DNA extraction, so you dive directly into just lysis and testing. So that will reduce the cost. But above all, you need partners on board. The government cannot run this alone. You need to bring on board partners, add more money, and then you extend the subsidized price to the patient.
And of course, now the catch is that we are all in this together. So everyone is trying to put resources towards their very own end. But let's keep the beat on what is happening right here in the country. I saw you have a conversation, or better yet, an interaction with Kemri just the other day, Dr. Omolo. What are some of the issues that you discussed? What were the issues that were of priority, especially when it comes to testing of COVID-19 in the country?
Thank you very much. As a product of Kemri, I started my career in CDC in Kemri, and I always reach out to the institute most of the time, but I don't want to talk on behalf of the institute. We have kits from our company AIT Biotech, and before the registration process for every kit to be used in a country and to be adopted into the national algorithm, you have to validate the kit. So we gave out a number of tests to one of the Cambridge laboratories at Professor Matilu's lab to ensure that it's validated before we roll out, because there are WHO standards. You cannot just buy a kit from anywhere which is not controlled and you bring it to the country and start testing. So Cambridge plays a very important role in validation of these processes and ensuring we have standardization in testing.
All right, let me move now to Dr. Will. And just some time ago, we had the WHO talk about revising protocol around testing across the world. Maybe you can take some time and talk to us about some of the issues that could guide this conversation moving forward. Testing protocols revision around the world. Dr. Will.
Okay, I think there's one thing people probably in the beginning for the medical professionals and WHO point to a plan to do the testing. They probably couldn't imagine the scale every country doing it, and so they were bringing new people, new lab, less experience in PCR testing to do the PCR test. So the result that is it brings a lot of false negative or false positive results. So it costs even more trouble. So what recently they are doing is they actually strengthen the testing protocol. They're actually including every part of this, the whole chain. So like I say, from the beginning, you need a frontline workers collecting the sample. Then you need to collect the sample, send it to the lab, go through the DNA, RNA extraction, prepare the sample, then you go to the PCR testing. Then you still need to interpret the result. So it is a chain of tests to determine this person has the COVID-19 or not. So even from the very beginning, collecting the sample, if they did it wrong, you're gonna throw the whole thing. So you probably will have a false negative result just because the person at the front line doesn't know how to collect the sample. So WHO, what they are doing now is actually put the whole thing together instead of just putting on the PCR. How they do the PCR. That's what they are trying to do now.
Right, Dr. Will, thank you so much for that. Dr. Molo, let me come back to you. If you compare the situation in Kenya with similar countries, for example, sometime in April, Senegal was reporting that they've developed a testing kit that is going to cost around $1 or less. What should we do as Kenya to ensure that we get there?
Thank you very much for the wonderful question. For us to achieve $1 per test in country, we first of all look at so many things. for you to bring in a kit into the country, we need local solutions. We need local institutions to develop their own assays. By assays, I mean the tests, like the one was done in Senegal. So this is a challenge to our university departments and research institutions like KEMRI and other primary research institutes that are working here, is to develop local assays. By developing local assays, you cut on shipping costs. You're going to cut on taxes to bring in the kits into the country, and overall, you lower the price to adults. So it's achievable by having local solution.
Of course, players within the health stakeholders are a bit worried by the fact that this is a novel virus, and therefore evidence keeps showing day in, day out. To what extent should we expect that particular fact to influence testing moving forward?
Thank you for that question. The virus keeps evolving, and it's an RNA virus. It keeps mutating. That's its business, changing its genetic material to evade the immune system day by day. So, and you find that each population across the world is unique. Like, for example, there are populations who are people who really cannot get HIV, like the discordant couples. There are people who are resistant to malaria, and they also exist amongst our population. So to stratify the population, we've not even studied the patterns of infection. You could even find some population within the country resistant to this disease. We don't even know the strain that is circulating, because for this kind of virus, maybe to take you back a little bit, we have S and L type circulating within the population. So until our scientists do demographic studies, not just testing, but we get to know which strain is circulating, in which population, and how does it behave within the population, then we'll get a clear testing procedure that's uniform across board. But as of now, it's still prospects, and it's a learning experience every day.
And probably, yeah, you say it's a learning experience every day, and probably we can bring in Dr. Will on that. When it comes to demographic studies, especially within the Asian region, what are some of those factors that have really favored your work as you continue research around COVID-19 in that region?
Thank you for the question. I think this is still early. I think my personal opinion is still way too early to determine the race factor in this equation. Due to we don't have enough information and we don't have enough time to study this virus. Virus do mutate very frequently. That's the way how they survive the human new host. We only know this in zoological disease, jump from animal to human. They have to mutate to survive the new host. So at this point in time, I couldn't really make a quick conclusion of what the race factor would be. But back to the test, the reason if you see the Asian country, like I'll take again Singapore example, literally it's the testing. Before you have the cure, before you have the medication for this, the testing, control, quarantine is the only way to do it. The result we can see in Singapore is very successful, and so many countries is so facing the second wave. My personal opinion is I feel they are kind of put down their guard after the first wave. They feel everything get control. And on the other hand, in Singapore, they're still ramping up, even though the first wave is almost at the end. They still keep ramping up the testing to prevent the second wave to hit the country again.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Will. Dr. Molo, we've seen the country embark on mass testing exercises, and now the question is, how sustainable is it moving forward, owing to the fact that even the number of infections keep rising and rising by the day?
Thank you very much. Mass testing is a big challenge. That one I have to underscore that fact, because Kenya is a big territory as a country, and people keep moving into the country day by day across our borders. So mass testing is achievable. We have the equipment, we have high throughput machines, but where we get the main challenge, where the rubber hits the road, is the testing kits. For you to ship in testing kits into the country is a challenge. And with the global demand right now, for example, in Singapore and other countries, there's no raw material to process more test kits. And for you to order kits, it may take 6 weeks to 12 weeks to bring in kits into the country. So upscaling testing is the only way to go so that you know what's happening within the population, but achieving that through testing and considering the personnel that we had initially and the platforms we had initially, it's a big challenge, but achievable. But the main problem would be testing kits. That's where the main challenge is.
And now, how do we actually wrap our finger around this, being a developing nation, owing to the fact that you've said even raw materials are slowly dwindling, so there is no more to manufacture more kits. Moving forward, how can we address this challenge?
I think so far the Kenyan government has done a wonderful job in terms of testing by mapping out hotspots, Nairobi, Mombasa, and the specific estates within Nairobi, and they're testing there actively before it spreads out. So far we are doing good as a country, but the way to do that is to use more throughput machines and do more hours in terms of testing so that we reduce turnaround time. If we can work on turnaround time, and the government can also bring on board, there's so many young people with training in molecular disease diagnostics, but they're out there, they're jobless. If we can bring them into the system, the people who had finished their internship, to help with more hours of testing, then we are going to narrow the gap and upscale testing and achieve higher numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, it is being argued by health professionals that contact tracing as well as testing are sort of Siamese twins when it comes to the fight against COVID-19. And maybe, Dr. Will, you can tell us from your end, how are you able to properly manage and achieve contact tracing?
Oh, I think this is one section that Singapore did much better than every country in the world. One way they actually, because Singapore is very, the rule is very strict, all right? Government can impose the rule like overnight if that's good for the country. What Singapore does is, number one, they put the virus on the map by using massive testing, right? So you know where the virus presents. Second is, you know the virus in a certain group of population. You need to trace them. You need to contain them. How do you do that? Either you will have a dedicated isolation facility, or you can advise them stay home and monitor their movement. So in Singapore, what we did here is we have a mobile app we call Trace Together. So everybody going out, taking the public transportation, or go to the shop, it's currently the second phase of the we call circuit breaker. So at the beginning, first phase, we have to stay home, no restaurant, nothing opening. Currently, the restaurant is open, some shop is open. So if you need to go into the shop, you need to scan a code in front of the shop through the app, which is linked to your personal identity, which is your national ID number. So the government has a centralized system, understand this number into which locations. If something happened at a location, we identify a shopper in this restaurant has confirmed COVID-19 case, they will trace back who was in the shop at the same time with this case. They will contact those people, advise them either quarantine or go for the testing. So that's the way to do it. And Singapore did a fantastic job. I have to give a applause for the government.
Clearly involving technology when it comes to the whole element of contact tracing. Dr. Omolo, how can we improve our own contact tracing methodology?
I think in Kenya that's a big challenge, considering the level we've reached, and our systems are completely stretched, if we are to underscore that. That even, I was recently in Kenyatta Hospital to get a patient from Kibra bed space. Getting bed space is a challenge. So for us to increase contact tracing, we have to ensure that we do it at family level first. If we have a patient, don't look at the people interacted, look at family setup first, and then cordon off that and get the family to be tested through mandatory testing. That's where subsidized testing come in. If we don't subsidize our testing, we cannot do contact tracing because it will be in vain. You'll just bring them and put them together in a facility, and you will create more cross-infection within our population. The other place is if you do contact tracing, most probably someone will be arrested. So the government needs to put much more focus again on prisons and these containment facilities, because these are weak links where we can get the disease spreading across the population easily.
Let's talk about standards and quality, because that has been the recent conversation when it comes to the fight against COVID-19.
Yeah.
Lack of adequate standards. You know, the fact that PPEs can be substandard is a whole new conversation out there on the streets. How do we harness effort around this to ensure that we are able to improve when it comes to standardization of not only PPEs, but also even testing kits, Dr. Omolo?
That's a good question, and I think the buck stops with the government and the Ministry of Health in setting out guidelines and standards that we are supposed to use in line with the WHO standards. For example, COVID has presented a huge opportunity for cottage industries to mushroom. But it's to Kenyans, my dear Kenyans, not just about making money on the street by making masks, for example, N95 masks. We are dealing with a virus, and a virus is a submicroscopic particle. It's a submicroscopic particle, which is something you can't see with your eyes. So you can't protect it just by taking any piece of cloth and designing a unique face mask. We call them designer face masks. Just use the right face mask. If it's N95, if it's KN95, or the surgical masks that have 3 layers and proper standards. I'm not a material expert, but I can tell you, I can tell you for sure, the materials we are using currently, most of them are substandard and can only protect you maybe up to 10%. And we are not doing it for the police, we are doing it for ourselves and our families. So for standards, the buck stops with the Ministry of Health.
How about we actually empower young designers to manufacture these particular masks at the proper standard, but also fashionably so? Is that an option?
That's a great opportunity for us as a country, and I would not discourage cottage industries. The people who are following standards and ensuring everything meets the global requirement for fight against a virus, not a bacteria or fungus, is adhered to, then we encourage local production. This will increase business for us, employment for young people, and just ensuring our money circulates locally. We do not send most of our money abroad to import equipment, PPEs. So the more we invest locally in cottage industry with standards, as you've mentioned, the better for us. And it will help us reduce fighting the disease. If you cut out the link, the spread within the population quickly by using masks, you save on costs, and it gives you time to do mass testing. Because if it's spread sporadically across the whole country, then you have no opportunity in mass testing. It's fairly expensive and the government cannot afford.
Well, talking about the government, Dr. Omolo, I'll be picking your mind about what CS Mutahi Kagwe had to say, especially when it comes to the infiltration of tenderpreneurs into the fight against COVID-19. But very quickly, let me move to Dr. Will. And from your end, Dr. Will, how have you been able to ensure that you observe proper standards when it comes to the fight against COVID-19?
As a manufacturer, we follow a very strict ISO 13485. It's a medical grade safety, it's a standard for manufacturing. So every product we manufacture here, no matter it's the testing kit or the machine you see behind me, is following the standard. So we can show our customer and our user everything they use from day 1 to day 5 to day X. It's the same quality like the first day they receive. And so I think you guys mentioned a very important part is the quality. We do see a lot of this kind of incident happen around the globe because this thing, the scale is none of us have seen this happen before, the testing scale. So they did present an opportunity for people to start manufacturing their own things and provide to the market. Sadly, I would say some people purely go into this just for a profit, for the money. So they don't really care about the standard, and which is very dangerous in this line of business. We have been, AIT Biotech have been doing this since early 2000. So we have been in business for 20 years, and we strictly follow the standard. We actually had the opportunity to go through a couple of pandemic around the globe from SARS. Before that will be the flu, influenza flu happening in Asia. So we all have played a part of that. So we understand creating a quality kit, provide a reliable result is the key for the customer and to control the situation.
Dr. Molo, you know, it is now in public knowledge that there's a bit of a fishy business, especially between Afia House, KEMSA, KEBS, you know, with tenderpreneurs making sure that the taxpayer and the local manufacturers are on the losing end. One sample returning different scores, still within the same guidelines given by the same government. What do you have to say about this?
For the scandal that we've seen, the purported scandals in the media, it's shame to our beloved country what's happening if it's true, but we also recognize that if we are genuine with what we are doing as a country, I know it's a ponderous box. Remember, whatever you're doing, the shortcut you're doing, you're also doing for your family, because the test could have helped your mom or your son or your kid. And in code of conduct for disease diagnostics, always do it for the patient. Don't do it for yourself. The patient could be yourself, because these are viruses and it could be anywhere. So for standards, you're talking about tests that there's parity and there's pull from both sides. I have to say, as a molecular disease diagnostic expert, that these kits use different markers from different companies. By markers, I mean identifiers. Within the virus gene, there are some conserved regions that are conserved evolutionarily. So these are different hotspots that never change despite the virus evolving. So what happens is that most companies use these specific and changing markers to identify the virus or to test or to pick it out from a sample. So there's some companies that use up to 3 markers, the genes. Some companies use 2 markers. They use 2 markers within the same population, but with an internal control from a human gene. So these variations, you could maybe one company that's using 3 markers could pick out a positive sample, but another one that only has that conserved region and using 2 markers could miss. But that's not an excuse for not standardizing tests, because you don't just buy test kits from anywhere. It must have WHO standards. It must be validated, and that's why we took a first step of taking our kit to Cambridge for validation. You don't just appear, you have a PCR machine and you start testing. So that's a big question that we have. And patients also differ, because you find within the human system, it's a totally different ecology, yeah? And some people say convert quickly, and that may also explain. But I can say the baseline is we should not compromise on standards. The body in charge of standardization in the country must take charge and not wait for private institutes to take over testing and be the big person, quote unquote, in this testing.
All right, Dr. Will, let me get your final word when it comes to this whole element of testing. Moving forward, what will be your priority, even as a company, to ensure that you're able to provide kits that will survive the test of time as far as COVID-19 is concerned?
Like we already know, the virus keeps changing. So for us, we were making sure our kits, our testing kit can pick up the virus, even they changing their genetic composition or the arrangement. So we are a team blasting out all the data, our kit to there's a known sequence database we're testing every day to make sure we don't miss anything. That's number one. Number two, you have to look into other disease as well. Remember, when you get a COVID, they talk about a symptom like coughing, fevers. This is the same symptom like you have for influenza, which is happening soon, is in the winter time. So with this tool, have completely different virus, but with a very similar symptom. You need some tool to help you to differentiate what is what. So for next, we are looking into a kit can differentiate the COVID-19 and influenza A, B, or RSV, BCV virus. So I think that will provide a great tool for the medical professionals or frontline workers to help them to how to treat the certain virus or certain patient that take the right action. So for us, always we are trying to provide the best solution for the customer. And since, like I said, beginning of the AIT biotech days till today, we never let the standard go away.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Will, for that. Dr. Molo, even pursuant to your conversation with Kembri the other day, what should be our expectation as Kenyans when it comes to testing moving forward?
For testing moving forward, I think we're on the right track. If most of our testing centers get kits in time, then we're going to get huge numbers. And this will advise government properly on the way forward in tackling this disease. And to contribute to that as a way forward in disease testing, as a company, we don't also just come on board to make money. At times, it's also good to face the country and say, like from AIT Biotech and my service in Africa as a territory manager, we are going to donate 10,000 test kits to contribute in upscaling testing. And this will pick up with any government institution that's doing the same as from next week.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Omolo, who is a disease diagnostics expert and currently appointed as the territory manager for Africa, that is AIT Biotech Pty. Thank you so much for that. And earlier on, we were having Dr. Will Chiang joining us live from Singapore, where he's the business director of the same company, that is AIT Biotech. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time, and thank you for watching this particular section of the show. We've been looking at COVID-19 and testing, the challenges, and some of the milestones that have been made when it comes to testing of coronavirus, not only right here in the country, but across the world. We'll be back with more, but right now I'm handing you over to Jane Wambui.
Now, since COVID-19 was characterized and declared a global pandemic by the World Health Organization in March of this year, the entire global population was sent into a state of crisis. And as humans, when we're in a state of crisis, our mental health are the hardest hit. But what can we do to protect our state of mental being and also our psychosocial state of being? And to make it worse, it has, according to some research that has been done, it has come up that our medics, our healthcare providers who are at the front line of fighting this invisible enemy, are having it worse, but in silence. And one wise man once said, if our medics are sick, it is bad for everyone. That is a conversation we want to have in not too long, so do stay with us. We are going to be joined by one lady as we celebrate our women who are at the forefront championing for this better mental health for everyone. Thank you for staying with us. Remember, this is Good Morning Kenya. We welcome you to be part of this discussion. Remember, the hashtag to get to us on Twitter is Good Morning Kenya. At KBC Channel 1 is our official station handle. My handle is the Jadon Boy across all social media platforms, and our Facebook page is KBC Channel 1 TV. Do send through your questions, comments, or any clarifications that you may be needing in regards to this discussion. Now, we are going to switch gears and just try to have a look at mental health amid COVID-19. The entire globe is in a state of crisis, but what of our medics? No one is asking if they're okay, how they are doing. But as studies have shown, our medics are having it harder because of having to be at the front line, looking at the lives that are lost on a daily basis. So how are they doing mentally? And that is what we want to talk about this morning. And to help us with this discussion, we are joined by Dr. Joanne Korir, who is the General Manager for Health Equity Group Foundation, who is going to help us better understand this whole conversation about mental health and psychosocial wellness. Good morning, Dr. Joanne.
Good morning.
Karibu sana to Good Morning Kenya. Thank you for making time to be with us this morning.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here this morning.
All right, now let's just get straight into this conversation about mental health, and especially for our medics. But before we actually get to understand a bit about that conversation, let's get to understand your organization and what it does in regards to this whole fight against COVID-19.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'd like to talk about what we do at the Equity Foundation and at the Health Pillar. Very briefly, I think Equity Group Foundation is known for the work that is done in the education pillar through Wings Supply and through the Equity Leadership Program. We also have we do work in 6 different sectors. So we have education, we have health, we have energy and environment, agriculture, financial inclusion and entrepreneurship development, and social protection. So we are active in the various sectors. So under health, the Equity Foundation has been championing a mission to provide high quality and affordable, accessible healthcare services across the country. And we do this through a chain of franchised healthcare facilities called Equity Afya. And I'm sure some of our viewers have probably seen the Equity Afya facilities. Currently, we're in a number of counties across Kenya, and our target is to expand to all counties. We stand at 22 facilities operational as of now, and some undergoing fit out. And we have a steep target in terms of the number of facilities that we intend to put up. So how we ensure that that service is affordable and accessible is that our pricing model ensures inclusivity and ensures the financial access for Kenyans. Consultation, for example, is only 500 shillings. In terms of service scope, you can find all services that you would find at an outpatient facility at the Equity Afya facilities, meaning you will see a doctor, so general practitioners consultation. We have visiting specialists, physicians, dermatologists, gynecologists, pediatricians, visiting physiotherapists. And then internally, we also have optical services and dental services. So it's the whole range of care within those facilities, and with a targeted average cost per visit that is very affordable for Kenyans.
Okay.
At our facilities, again, is that we can access this through insurance payments. So various insurances, including the National Hospital Insurance Scheme. So through that manner, the acceptance of any payment model, you find then that we do not limit access to anyone in particular. So we target then that in the next few years, we should be in every corner of the country and extend that kind of high quality service to all our partners. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Now, you have spoken quite in detail in regards to what your organization does. Now, when it comes to mental health and psychosocial well-being, maybe you can let us know how your organization is providing this support for Kenyans before we narrow it down to our healthcare providers.
Yeah, so thank you then again for that opportunity to highlight that. I think especially around the COVID pandemic, what happens is that there's a lot of uncertainty about it, and when we go back to the basis or the description of what health really is, many of us imagine that in the context of COVID, that health would mean you're not infected from the disease, so you're protected and you're safe and generally that entails health. But remember, if we go back to what the World Health Organization, for example, defines health to be, it says that health is not just, health is a complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease. So the fact, for example, in the COVID context, that you're not infected, or that probably your loved ones or the people who are close to you are not infected with the disease, does that imply health? Not necessarily. There's still a lot of exposure that comes around that, from the social aspect and also the mental aspect. And then you can have these sort of exposure going on concurrently, so that you're infected with COVID, for example, and meanwhile, it's also causing you mental anguish. And when we talk about mental anguish at around that time, it's not just for, say, those who are infected, for example. It could also mean even those that are not infected, for example. Yeah, so the mental strain will occur in all spheres, meaning, number one, to the general population. Number two, then it could also be for those who generally are under treatment for other mental conditions usually. It could also mean those who are in quarantine and isolation, and also the healthcare workers during COVID. So what is the reason for this is that when you look at diseases as infectious, for example, as COVID, highly infectious, and some of the management modalities around COVID, you will find that some of the ways in which we are restricting its spread is through isolation, for example. We've been advised that we need to stay indoors as much as possible, venture out only when you must. Even at our workplaces, we are no longer seeing the colleagues that we usually work with. In our social circles, we are no longer exposed to the same people that we see. We're not going to church. And those are the places where we or human beings generally go to socialize. So if you do not have access to such a social support mechanisms, it presents an exposure. Now, on the healthcare worker front, what does this mean, or what does such a time in history mean? It means an increased workload, for example, and there's also the unpredictability, and in terms of the changing outcomes and changing information on what we know about COVID, for example. If we go back to think about March, for example, what we knew about COVID and what we now know, or what was said about COVID and what we now say, for example, there's been a lot of changes as far as that goes. So the truth is that when you do not have sufficient information around any situation, it presents that stress and that strain, with the feeling generally coming around that you do not have sufficient information, you're not on top of things at this time, so it can be very stressful. So that, against the backdrop of an increased workload, the uncertainty, the risk of infection, the lack of social support mechanisms, then presents a serious exposure, not just for healthcare workers, but even the population at large.
All right. Now, speaking about the population at large, and of course, still looking at our healthcare providers, when it comes to looking out for signs and symptoms that may point towards, a state of not being well when it comes to your mental state, what are some of those telltale signs that we need to look out for that point towards mental illnesses of any form?
Okay, so mental illnesses, of course, will present in various manners. But of the most common mental health conditions, these you will start noticing trends which may highlight the fact that something may be the issue. Now, in the context of COVID, if you allow me to talk about that in the context of COVID, and not just perhaps for the healthcare worker, but for the general population. So you'll start noticing changes in the way you feel, or if you're observing someone else, in the way they react to various situations, or how they are generally behaving in these circumstances. So sadness, for example, so there's the aspect of general feeling of depression, being low, or even apathy. So you generally do not care. You feel, this is a situation that I cannot get on top of. I really don't know what to do, the uncertainty. So you tend to develop that feeling of apathy. You don't care about outcomes. You become easily irritable. Yeah, so we may tend to note that, and we've seen it even in the general public, where if you're irritable, people will ask you, what's going on? Talk about it. Yeah, so you're easily irritable, easily frustrated, yeah, you tend to blame others for the situation. So you could be blaming your peers, your colleagues, anybody but yourself, the government. You're blaming others or trying to shift the blame around that, around the situation that you're facing. You're indifferent. You, yeah, come what may. I think let's, perhaps live life a day at a time. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how this unfolds. So you're indifferent. Self-care as well. So you no longer care about grooming, and you don't give that due attention to your grooming, for example. And then isolation and separation from others. You prefer to be generally just away from others. Yeah, I want to spend time alone behind locked doors. You find being around others very irritating, and just generally feeling like a failure, and feeling that level of disinterest in the circumstances that face you. So there are some of the signs that could come out clear to someone, and even to those of us who are observing a secondary party.
All right. Now bringing, flipping the coin, that's looking at the side of our medics. For most of them, they are forced to look strong and be resilient as they are dealing with, patients who are coming in having contracted this virus. What toll is this taking on their state of mental well-being?
Yes, so thank you very much. And yes, it is indeed a challenging time for the medics. And just as I talked about the aspect of there's uncertainty around COVID, for example, that alone it presents a situation where you're feeling, am I good enough, or am I well equipped to even manage such a situation? Earlier, when the COVID pandemic broke out, one of the leading research companies in the country did a study and research and demonstrated that healthcare workers were not feeling confident about managing the COVID situation. So that feeling, in the first instance, of not being adequately equipped, with the number one, the information, the training, the preparation, the tools to handle the pandemic or the unfolding situation, already presents a stressful situation for the healthcare workers. Number two becomes the aspect of tools of trade. Yeah, so are we well equipped? The aspect of the personnel protective equipment, the PPEs came up as well. So am I safeguarded? Am I safe enough that even as I try and balance the duty to care versus my safety, am I well equipped? Number three, what happens then if I get infected? Yeah, how will it unfold? Say, it's been talked about COVID, for example, having being strenuous if you have pre-existing conditions, that outcomes may not be very good. So what happens if I have pre-existing conditions and yet I have the duty to care for others, for example? So what then happens in that situation? Other questions arise, for example, about the risk of taking the infection home to your loved ones. Yeah, and how will that unfold? Yeah, if, for example, I get infected myself and I need to get called out of duty, does that present a risk to my level of earnings on a daily basis? Is my job at stake? So there's all these things that are at play at that given moment for the healthcare workers, and then it presents a challenge. So the advice then to them has been then that for the healthcare workers to work together and understand that these are situations that they can handle together. And one of the things that Equity Group Foundation, together with partners, the Kenya COVID Fund, and the various health worker associations did was to establish a program, a mental health wellness program for healthcare workers to be able to address these. And this was in the understanding as well that that these challenges are being addressed by healthcare workers for healthcare workers. So you're speaking to a fellow colleague who understands the challenges, who probably lives through them, who is facing the same challenges. And so when you talk about debrief, you're comparing notes or discussing live scenarios with a colleague who is living under the same circumstances.
All right. Now, still keeping up with the effects on our medics. Now, there's this whole situation when it comes to losing patients. It is sad, but it is happening, and at a quite high rate. Now, for our medics, what are some of the consequences of having such experiences after a medic has given their all to just attend to these patients wholeheartedly, and sadly, at the end of the situation, this patient loses their life? And what can we do as regular folk to help support them when it comes to their psychosocial well-being?
Yeah, so thank you very much. So As I've mentioned, is that the COVID pandemic or the COVID disease itself is very, very unpredictable. And we've seen that as in terms of presenting a risk factor even for healthcare workers or caregivers around the COVID pandemic. So what happens is you would have patients who are generally stable or generally seem to be improving on a daily basis, and suddenly you lose those patients. It's very distressing, very mentally stressful, and can be very disturbing for the healthcare workers because you don't see, probably as in other conditions, a deterioration over time, and at the back of your mind, you tend to have it as a fear that you could lose this patient. So these are situations where your patient seems otherwise well, seems to be improving, and sudden demise. It's very distressful for the healthcare workers. And at the end of the day, what we would say then in terms of advice, what do you need to do to support your healthcare workers as far as this goes is, number one, what the government has been encouraging, the preventive aspect of it. I think because of outcomes that are generally not very clear, and even risk factors that we are not very clear in terms of how things will go based on what conditions you may have underlying, let's focus a lot on the preventive aspect. And I think that is the biggest support that any Kenyan can give to the healthcare workers by focusing very closely to the aspect of prevention, do your bit so that we minimize the exposure in terms of getting to the level where you then have to be managed. But then for the healthcare workers as well, like I talked about, the aspect of duty to care. Healthcare workers will always be there, I think, for Kenyans at the end of the day. So we face such situations, and for the mental stresses and psychological, psychosocial even disturbances that come with all these, we are saying these are issues that can be addressed. We have qualified healthcare workers that address these on a daily basis. We have our clinical psychologists, we have our psychiatrists, generally healthcare workers who understand these and can support you through that process of finding that balance amid such a challenging and difficult situation.
All right. Now, you've just mentioned, one of the solutions to dealing with when it comes to getting psychosocial support is talking to somebody. But for those who might not have access to maybe talk to a professional, counseling psychologist or anyone in that profession to help them to deal with these mental challenges that they may be having, and of course they are presenting some of those symptoms that you had mentioned earlier, what other activities can they engage in to just try and get out of that situation, to get their mental being into a better state?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question, because I think in terms of health-seeking behavior, or even your strategy in terms of trying to find solutions for such problems for the general public, the advice would be this: start somewhere. And I think in starting somewhere, it even starts with yourself. For example, a personal debrief, for example, where you're debriefing on a personal level, includes even documenting some of the issues that you're facing or about your feelings. Journal, write it down, and write about your feelings. I know sometimes when we're going through tough situations and you write it down, later when you come to review it, you actually find it very fulfilling that you went through such a difficult time and were able to get out of it. So that in itself, and the documenting, helps. That's number one. Number two is call upon your social support systems. Yeah, we would have our families, our relatives, our friends, our religious groupings that we attend, be it church, be it the mosque. So you have those social support networks. Call upon them. Even with the restrictions of movement, for example, you're still able to access those probably through digital channels. Yeah, be it just as simple as a call. Yeah, you can do a Zoom video with your relatives. Yeah, those debrief sessions. And then before you even talk about the aspect of accessing someone who's qualified to address some of the challenges that you're facing, perhaps apart from just your social networks, feel free to talk about it again. When you open up about some of these things, you may find that people around you are facing the same challenges, and that aspect of even hearing that this seems to be a new normal. It's a challenging time for everyone. Everyone is facing this challenging situation. How are they coping? It helps you as well realize that apparently I'm not in this alone. Apparently there are solutions. Apparently there's people who've gone through it, and this is what they recommend. And even if it progresses, if it does, then you need to then seek professional care. And as I mentioned, then we have a qualified medical personnel who are able to address these. So it can start with you yourself in terms of owning it, documenting it, opening up on it, and all the way to the level of now being able to seek qualified attention from as high as a psychiatrist. I know sometimes when we talk about psychiatrists for Kenyans, you may say, would there be stigma in terms of even accessing such a specialist?
Yes.
But it means you're taking your health really to your own hands. And then psychiatrists address our mental health challenges. As I opened by saying, when you're talking about health, it's not just the physical, which is addressed by the other specialties, but mental health sits right inside there within the definition of what sound health looks like.
All right. Now, we've also seen situations where some medics are also blaming, or rather according blame to the hospitals in which they work because they feel they are not protected enough, and consequently some may carry this virus home. Now, when it comes to our hospitals, what can they do to just better protect and ensure that our medics are protected both physically and also their mental well-being?
Okay, so we appreciate the work that has been done by various stakeholders and even the medical facilities where our healthcare workers work. At the end of the day, when we talk about, for example, the PPE aspect, we shall never have, sufficient stocks of PPE for us to feel that you're well protected. And healthcare workers will tell you, even when you're fully donned in the entire level 3 or the highest level of PPE kits for COVID care, you still feel there's an exposure. Will I get infected as I'm removing my garments, or somehow will there be a way that the infection will still be able to get through to me even when I'm well done? So at the end of the day, how facilities and other stakeholders can even support the healthcare workers, it begins with number one, the training in terms of where will the exposures come from, such even the healthcare workers actively manage that. You may have the full, for example, PPE kit, but if not well worn, there's still very high chances of you getting exposed even as you're probably wearing or getting out of it, or PPE that's not well worn presents in itself a challenge in terms of exposure. So provide the trainings for the healthcare workers, more about what the disease is all about, how you could catch it, how you need to protect yourself. There's trainings on how to properly wear the PPE garments and how to properly get out of them, the donning and the doffing. So provide those trainings. Then apart from the training to equip now the healthcare workers, then provide now the PPE garments themselves. And then for the healthcare workers, again, one of the things that we're doing is also encouraging them to use available PPE prudently, so that you're only wearing what you need at any given time. You don't need to wear, say, the full armor when you're in a situation that doesn't call for it. So prudent and judicious use. But at the end of the day, I think it calls upon generally all stakeholders to work together in terms of addressing this, and with that, then we should be able to address the challenges even as far as inadequate PPE availability goes.
All right. Now, as we draw the conversation to a close, just have a quick look at, the dissemination of information surrounding COVID-19. We have been seeing the Ministry of Health give us daily updates when it comes to the number of new cases that have been found, recovery cases, and of course, the fatalities that have been recorded. When it comes to the disbursement of this information, from where you stand, do you feel it is also contributing to mental challenges, or it is actually helping when it comes to better knowing how to protect ourselves and knowing how to just take care of ourselves when it comes to our mental well-being?
Yeah, so as I touched on earlier, insufficient information already presents a risk for stress and resultant, mental even strain. You need to be well informed for you to be able to address the challenge that's facing you with the knowledge and information that you have at hand. I think then, based on that, then I can say that the government has done very well in terms of providing the daily updates on what is happening, how the situation is unfolding, where the cases are breaking out, which counties have the highest cases, what are the counties doing to mitigate some of these. At the end of the day, I feel they have done well, but at the end of the day, in any situation, there's always room for improvement. So they have done well with the updates, because to be forearmed with information also puts the decision or it advises the citizens as well on what they need to do, what part they need to play based on the numbers that they're seeing, based on how they're seeing the situation to be unfolding. What level of responsibility do they need to also put in their hands to be able to address the pandemic? You can imagine if you're faced with a situation where you don't know what's happening, you don't know which counties are reporting the highest cases, for example. So even at a personal level, then you don't know how to act around such a situation. So I feel the government has, at the end of the day, done quite well, been very forthright with information. We have generally appreciated the updates that we've gotten from our Ministry of Health, from the President telling us about the socioeconomic impacts and calling upon us as Kenyans to take the situation in our own hands in terms of the preventive aspect of it, and not sit back and feel that someone else will address this for me. So I feel the information, the continuous and ongoing information has been good. Yes, there's always room for improvement in terms of what more do people want to hear about, and provide that information. But generally, I think I score that we've done relatively well with the information aspect.
All right. Thank you very much. That is Dr. Joanne Correal, who is the General Manager for Health Equity Group Foundation, talking to us in regards to mental health and psychosocial well-being. Now, this has been a conversation that has been ongoing, not just on mainstream media, but also on social media. So many people are struggling during this time. So many jobs have been lost. Medics are also struggling and in silence because they are forced to put up this strong persona as they continue to take care of the rest of the population. But what of their mental well-being? We'll keep having this conversation just to see how we can better protect our mental well-being and just take care of ourselves generally, to just ensure that our psychosocial states are A-OK. So that brings us to a close of this discussion. But Good Morning Kenya is not over. Sam.
Thank you so much, Jane, for that. And now we will begin a conversation around the division of revenue. That particular motion finds its way to the floor of the Senate for the 7th time this afternoon. What can we expect moving forward, and what will be some of the newsworthy issues that we can look forward to in the course of coverage to this particular story? Well, that conversation with Hamisi Mboga live from Mombasa County begins right now. Keep talking to us. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya. Welcome to the program. Now, some of the issues that will be guiding this conversation around division of revenue is the fact that since the year 2013, which is associated with the inception of devolution in this country, there has always been an issue with this particular formula. At one point, they will say, is it the work of the Senate or is it the work of the National Assembly to originate the division of revenue allocation bill, owing to the fact that it is a money bill? But the Supreme Court has given its advisory on this particular matter. It actually did so for the first time in 2013, and it talked about consultation and the two houses working together. Now, moving forward, of course, we've seen a lot around this particular matter, but this time around, it appears to have a new twist to it. Which formula will be used moving forward to ensure that money is equitably distributed across all the 47 counties? Will it be a question of population or geographical characteristic? Now, that is the conversation. Would like to begin with Hamisi Mboga, who's joining us live from Mombasa County, an expert on devolution and governance. Hamisi, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the program. In your own opinion, what exactly should be guiding the conversation around division of revenue for the year 2020-2021? Okay, we shall be rectifying a technical hitch when it comes to the Hamisi there. We cannot exactly get you, but we'll be getting back to you in just a short while. And just to give you a snip into what you can expect this afternoon, all eyes will be on the Senate to see whether or not they will agree on a formula to disperse monies to the counties. Now, focus will be on 7 senators who are expected to be the voice that could unlock this particular stalemate. Now, of key interest is that these senators, as much as they hail from counties that could benefit from the Kangata-led formula, it also appears that they decide to back their interests of other regions or the interests of Kenya at large. Take a look at, for example, Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja, who, as much as Nairobi will be getting an additional 1.2 billion Kenya shillings, he has decided not to go with the existing formula, saying that much more can be done to ensure that we tap into the interests of the marginalized communities. Now, here is Hamisi Mboga, a devolution and governance expert, joining us live from Mombasa. Thank you so much for joining us, Hamisi. Very quickly, what are your thoughts on what should guide the conversation on the floor of the Senate this afternoon?
Thank you very much for inviting me to share my views and my comments on this particular very important issue of revenue sharing among the counties and between the county and the national government. There's quite a number of issues and bases that I'm using. One, it's constitutional, that this money that is collected must be shared equitably between the national and county governments and among the counties. Two, there's nothing in this context which is not political. Division of revenue is political. Particular interests of parties are political. If you look at representation is political. And when the constitution was being made, and also when we looked at the laws that are governing counties, the issue of saying which parameters shall we use? Population, poverty index, how far are you from the headquarters? And we looked at all these issues, and figures were given during that time. That's why we were using the old formula. Now that we are about 7 years, we need to review that formula. Is it working? And some of the experiences that are coming out now, where the senators do not agree, is that if you use a new formula, some counties will be disadvantaged or they will lose some money. What the Constitution envisaged said we must do 3 things. First, the 3 C's: consultation, collaboration, and concurrence. Any issue that touches on both national and county and among the counties must be used through consultation, collaboration, and agreement between the parties. Now, this one, I'm not sure whether participation after the formula was suggested went through properly. You have the Senate, you need to consult there. You have the national government, it has to be consulted. And you have the recipient themselves, the county themselves. They need to have been consulted. You saw the Council of Governors discussing about this issue.
In fact, Hamisi, I would like to interject and bring in that particular meeting that happened between the Council of Governors, the CRA, and the Office of the Attorney General, as well as CS Ukuriatani, that in the absence of a law, that is the Counties Allocation Revenue Act, if that particular piece of legislation is absent, then counties should benefit from a 50% allocation from what was given to them the previous year. At what point then do we involve audited accounts in as far as that particular piece of legislation is concerned?
We had a problem 5-7 years ago in terms of which audited accounts shall we use. And anticipation of the Constitution is every year or the year before, the accounts must be audited so that we use those current figures. But I'm not sure whether we are updated in terms of auditing all our accounts. So all the time, if you look at the budgets, they have been using unupdated accounts to have the ratio, to have the amount, and that has been a challenge. And it's going to be even bigger if we don't do it this year, especially now that everybody has woken up in terms of sharing of the revenue. So we are saying all these factors matter. The account must be audited so that when you say we have 1.3 trillion Now, the counties are looking at that percentage, whether it is 1, it is 47 or 27 of that 1 trillion. But if you share it less than that one, somebody will ask, if we had this budget, where is the other money going if we're only going to share a part of that one? And the 50% was kind of a stopgap so that we can be able to prepare and argue on this other one.
And therein lies the issue, Hamisi. Why do we always treat this matter as an event? We always know at the inception of any financial year, there will be division of revenue between the county and national government, but we, instead of investing in a process that is going to save us from a crisis, we always treat it as an event that finds us at this particular stalemate.
Again, this is the political setup and this is the political country, and the challenge lies there. Immediately after this, if we sorted the problem today in Senate and we divide, we have a whole year. So what are the steps that are being taken so that we kind of not have this issue next year? Somewhere, people concentrate on other issues. They're not bad issues, but there are other issues which are not financial. And we need to do that immediately after this. Whatever direction the decision will be made this afternoon, either yes or no, whether agreement or not, then we have to set up a serious process. Whom do we consult? At what angle? When do we agree before the end of the budget? And this formula, has it been taken through all the processes? I think we have a challenge, but I think this afternoon, if you involve more stakeholders, because now I'm happy, the parties are coming in, the Senate is coming in, and the other stakeholders are coming in. So let's have a sitting until we agree. And if we don't agree on the share, can we agree with a stopgap, say between now and that time, let's do this, but let's have a forward movement in terms of total agreement. And maybe I'm also waiting for BBI. What does the BBI say in terms of this ratio? If that one comes and solves these problems that it is becoming perennial now, I think we should be on our own. But now we are leaving this ball in the Senate. The Senate is supposed to safeguard counties, is supposed to protect the counties, is supposed to oversight the counties, and this is their opportunity. If they can come out good in terms of assisting the counties, protecting them, but also looking at the national issues and interests. In this pandemic area and period, it's very challenging, very interesting.
And you know, Hamisi, when you assess the various options that are on the floor of the Senate, which one would you choose and why?
When the debate is blurred because they're using only one parameter. I've heard a lot of people talking about population. It should not be the only parameter to be used. Population, yes, but the other parameters that were used before, and if you look at it, the change is so small between 18 and 20, between 45 and so people can negotiate around that so that the counties can go on. We get we get a breathing space so that people can really sit and decide the really formula. And if you say population, what percentage should what weight should we give population, and what weight should we give poverty index? What weight should we give? So that one cannot be done in a number of hours that we have between today and between now and the end of the debate. But can we agree on the middle ground? I like those people who are talking about middle ground. We're already caught up. So let's sit with the middle ground and then strategize. The formula, the difference is so small if you look at it. If you say population, that's why the experts looked at it, don't use only one parameter because the others will suffer. If you use population, there are people who don't have population, but they have even bigger issues in terms of development. There are people who have no population, but they're contributing to the economy much more compared to the population that they have. All of these factors must be considered before a decision is made. And it's tricky and it's political. Now it has been caught with BBI. Some people will hide in BBI to stop this process, which is so important to the community. Right now, everybody's waiting for, look, just take one aspect. Salaries for all the 47 county staff. If we go on like this for the next few years, for the next few months, we are stuck. In fact, the unions are already just watching. And then we'll have standstill, no services, pandemic, COVID-19, political issues. This country will almost stop moving.
Yeah, and also appreciating the fact that this creates an opportunity to have an even bigger conversation around division of revenue. Maybe you can highlight some of the some of the issues that we can pick from this debate and help us grow a bigger and more beneficial conversation even for the years to come.
Yes, and remember before the constitution was adopted, there was this figure. Some figures were also thrown out. Can we give the counties 35%? But then that is only one step. After that, how do you divide the 35% or the 20% into 47? 47 units that are different in structure, different in geographic, different in economic prospect. So it's a bigger issue that people must compromise. You say give and take, okay? If you say population up to what level, at what point? If you say population must matter, there are people who are thinking those people with with high level of population have really grown into this system with infrastructure. There are people who don't have population and there were no infrastructure for the last 50 years. So there are all these issues and they're all political because they're interests of people. So we need to really bring these people into one room and say, this country must move on. What amount can get us somewhere? Can we use whatever formula we were using while we're discussing this for the next few months? Because the population has become an issue, but we need to cool down to think properly. Can we go on with the formula that we were using for the last 7 years and we have had not very big problems? The problem that I saw before was that formula was there, the amount was not reaching the counties at the time that is wanted. What are these other obstacles that are coming? Development was not moving as fast. What were the issues that are holding? So we have bigger issues than just the division of the revenue. But let's get something on the ground while we are discussing this hot issue. Let's agree. Is it between now 50% of what they are required to get, they get immediately next week or this week? And then we have enough time to be able to think about all this. And the economic aspect must be thought of. For the last 6 months, we have not been producing as much as we wanted in terms of our economy. Will that be a factor? These are some of the issues that must come in. And those people who are saying postpone the decision are also logical, because if you postpone it, then you have enough time now in this pandemic period to think out properly and officially. Right now, the temperatures are coming. They want to take money from us.
And better
they want
yet,
to give more money to the other people. Yes.
And better yet, Hamisi, we've been postponing it since 2013. We always say that the next financial year will create an opportunity to address the gaps that have been created by this previous year. But for now, thank you so much for your time and contribution. I'm very sure your eye will be as keen as mine on the floor of the Senate this afternoon to see what transpires moving forward.
Thank you very much, but the senators must close ranks and think like a nation and distribute the ratio like brothers and family in one house, and then we must sit immediately.
All right.
We must discuss with all the stakeholders immediately. Thank you very much.
thank you too for your time and have a great day ahead. Now that has been Hamisi Mboga, our devolution and governance expert, addressing some of the issues that always ensue courtesy of this particular period in time, division of revenue and the county's allocation during every financial year. So which formula will take the day? Or will it be yet another embarrassing situation as this particular matter is relooked at for the 7th time on the floor of the Senate? Should we see any improvement, or will it be a situation of being or going back to the drawing board? Now, those are some of the issues that our team will be piecing together for you, and thank you so much for watching the show this day. This has been Good Morning Kenya. My name is Samuel Njoroge. Have a fantastic day ahead, and remember, News Check is coming up as from 10 a.m. Good morning.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Come right now.
What is it?
His Majesty needs your help.
Today I have realized how you can grant wishes with certain deeds. My son got his father's love.
Ashok, what are you doing here?
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
It was true. My brother really left the $1 million to Juana. There is a video where it's all recorded.
See, I knew from the beginning that your mother was mistaken.
It's you. What are you doing here?
To pick up my son. You're blinded by that man who does not show you an ounce of respect.
Julio is going to be managing that fortune and he will leave me. He told me.
Your husband is a manipulator. And now it's time for you to give him a taste of his own medicine.
In love with Ramon.
The 4th edition of Fashion and Lifestyle was hosted at the Michael Joseph Center, where the high flyers in the showbiz and fashion industry came in numbers to wine, dine, and support the local fashion industry. Networking took center stage as those who attended the event made the best of the evening. It was a buzz of activities with great music, exhibitions of perfumes and jewelry.
We started way back in 2014. It hasn't been easy though getting sponsors to come aboard and help us out, but we've got a new partnership with Alchemist. So we'll be having a monthly edition with them once a month. So it's a progress. At least now we can say people are starting to believe in the Kenyan fashion industry.
The runway affair was quite a treat. It included different designs tailored from different materials that matched the theme of the event. Model after model showcased a rich repertoire of unique local apparel. Ashley, who is a woman wear designer specializing in costume and streetwear, had her collection showcased.
I used lots of leathers, I used clear PVC that I spray painted, and I used many soft materials like chiffon and satin. I've showcased in about 2 other shows previously last year, and it's really good to showcase as a designer because you get to have your name out there and you make such good networks that help you build your brand.
With every click and roll of the cameras and the moral support from the audience, the models pulled off all the tricks in the book. Judging from the claps they got while on stage, the audience were having a good time and were getting value for their money. Indeed, the local fashion industry has a lot to offer.
I'm liking the local designers, and we've come a long way as Kenya, and we have a bright future. I think watching movies that are coming up, fashion trends in Kenya are being used, and we're grateful.
The event, which is one of the few fashion events that have consistently got better with time, is repositioning itself with the hope of getting more sponsors and activities on board.
The international boy, DJ
Enthusiasts from the East Africa region were all donned up and ready for the annual CBA Africa Concours d'Elegance event. A collection of classic vintage cars and motorcycles dotted the Nairobi racecourse grounds, and it was apparent that the car lovers were out for a good time. A walk through history, this event has attracted entries from different countries, from Asia, Europe and African continent, with the agenda of sailing Kenya as the ideal destination of the tourist. True to these words, it was like a blast from the past when the parade was on. Car after car class, elegance, style and unique designs were exuded. Jaguar, Mercedes, Riviera, Volkswagen, Beetle, you name it, and it will be pretty much here. Waziri Kakoza is from Uganda and is a hardcore enthusiast and participant of the event. This year, he brought 3 cars and scoped 2 awards.
Mambo ni kama mawili ama matatu. Jambo la kwanza, huwa napenda sana competition. Sababu nikikompete, najua weakness yangu iko wapi. Kama tuseme mfano kama kuna vile nina weakness ya kutengeneza mali ama to clean the car. When I come this way, I know. Jambo la pili is friendship. I get friends when I compete. Number 3, it makes me keep my vehicles well maintained. Ili kama mtu anatamani, yani nasikia raha alafu huwezi jua labda kesho atakuja niambie nakupatia chapa.
Waziri's love for cars has enabled him to overcome the challenges that come with participation in such an event, given the distance he has to cover for him to be here.
Hapa gari ni nyingi. Number 2, watu wa kwetu wako na weakness ya kutengeneza magari. Alafu number 3, watu wengi wanafikiria kwamba when you compete you are going to win something. Yani it is not their passion like me. It's my passion. For example, now I've come with like a group of 5 people, just friends, to accompany me. Sasa mtu atakuanza kuuliza mumepata nini ili uanze kutumia pesa nyingi kama hizo. So when you don't love something, you can't get the sweetness of it.
Top on the list of